Marvel. Magic floating cloak choose me. Kamar Taj magicians are shocked. Chapter 81. Ned walked into the portal, thinking that the Ancient One was taking him somewhere in this universe, but he found that he had actually arrived at the Ancient One's quiet room in Kamar Taj. Don't be surprised. The power of every magic is more than what it shows. You will understand it later. The sound of Ancient One's voice instantly made her status in Ned's heart infinitely higher. This was like traveling through the multiverse at will. You go back to your room in Kamar Taj to recuperate for a while. I have something to do. I will tell you more about this incident later. Ji Yuyi said this, then opened another portal and walked straight in. Although Ned was curious when he saw this, he did not dare to be presumptuous in front of the Supreme Mage. He bowed to the place where the Ancient One had left and then walked out of her house, heading towards the place where he stayed when he was learning magic. Go to the room. The wizards he met on the road all looked sideways when they saw him, only because of Ned's empty left arm. Returning to his room, Ned first found a rag and simply dusted off the dust that had fallen everywhere, and then he crossed his legs on the bed and meditated. This is an indispensable daily process for the mages belonging to Kamar Taj, and the Supreme Mage is no exception, but Ned has never done it since the Battle of New York. Now that he is recuperating here under the orders of the Ancient One, I picked up this lesson again. Ned, Ned, Ned. Mordo shouted Ned's name, slammed open the door and broke in. When Mordo came in and saw Ned meditating, he looked embarrassed, lowered his head and was about to sneak away. Mordo. Ned's helpless voice sounded, can I ask what made you so upset? Of course, Mordo knew that such a loud movement must have awakened Ned from his meditative state. He scratched his head in embarrassment and said, you have been missing for a year. The Ancient One Master is in the library reading books every day. I want to find magic that can find you, and many mages think that you are dead, and they mourn for this, you. Modu said, suddenly paused, what's wrong with your hand? Upon hearing this, Ned pretended not to care and said, don't worry, it's just a small matter and it will get better. As he spoke, Ned got off the bed, poured a glass of water for Mordo and said, sit down, Mordo. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's catch up on old times here today. Mordo, however, no longer knew what Ned was talking about, and just looked at Ned's empty left arm in confusion. There was a saying that he once thought that with Ned's talent, his achievements in magic would sooner or later surpass that of the Ancient One and become the best Supreme Mage. Yes, although it is a bit disrespectful, Mordo, Wong, and even some other mages who are familiar with Ned all feel that Ned will be the perfect candidate for the next Supreme Mage. Of course, they didn't mean to offend Ji Yuyi in any way, and they still respected Ji Yuyi like a god. But now Ned has no arm. Although there is no express provision that the Supreme Mage must have sound limbs, as the face of Kamar Taj, if the Supreme Mage is disabled, then. Thinking of this, Modu clenched his fists and said angrily, who did it? Mordo believed that he still had some strength, otherwise he would have Ji Yuyi to take over, so he decided to find a way for Ned. Ned waved his hands indifferently and said, don't you know me yet? I'm not someone who will suffer a loss. The guy who attacked me gave his own life in exchange for one of my arms. I can't bear to lose my blood. Mordo was still angry after hearing Ned's words. When Ned saw this, he had to say, have you forgotten the teachings of the Ancient Master? As a secret magician, the more important thing is the cultivation of one's mind. You are so violent. He is so angry that if Master Ji Yuyi sees it, he will probably be very disappointed. When Mordo heard Ned mentioning the Ancient Mage, he finally lost his murderous aura. Without warning, he jumped up and sat cross-legged on Ned's wooden bed. He slowly formed seals with his hands and began to meditate, to stabilize the mind and eliminate the violent nature. Seeing this, Ned smiled bitterly and shook his head, and then thought about Mordo's darkening due to ideological issues in the movie later, and couldn't help but feel a headache. While he was thinking, there was another knock on the door. Ned opened the door and saw an anxious Wong standing at the door. When the king saw the door of the house opened and saw the tall Ned with his own eyes, he seemed to be relieved. He patted Ned's chest and said, I heard from other mages that they saw you appearing at Kamar Taj, and I didn't believe it a little, but now that I see you with my own eyes, I finally feel relieved. While speaking, Wong also noticed Ned's arm and opened his mouth, but in the end he just said, it's good to come back, it's good to come back. Wong knew that Ned must have been brought back by the Ancient One Mage. Since the Ancient One mage had taken action, the matter of Ned's arm would definitely be taken care of, whether with or without him, so the reaction was not as exciting as Mordo's. By the way, when are you going to exercise? Wang said with a strange look on his face. Of course, Ned would not tell the king that he was cheating with the power of the reality stone. He opened the door wide and chose to skip the topic and said, "Come in first, Mordo is meditating inside." Modo. The king did not refuse, and followed Ned in. After seeing Modu on the wooden bed, he said doubtfully, "Why is he meditating here? Your place has been unoccupied and cleaned for a long time, and there is dust everywhere." Although it is secretly the magician doesn't pay attention to these things, but his own house is not more comfortable than yours. After hearing this, Ned told the king what had just happened. After listening to Ned's narration, the king silently put down the teacup in his hand and said, "Well, Mordo's character is extremely good, but he is a bit extreme. In addition, he is quite old-fashioned and usually has no problems if nothing happens. If something big happens, it is indeed easy for him to make big mistakes because of his personality." Now that he had gotten started, the king continued, "Although I am not rigid in my words and my personality is not that impulsive, my talent in magic is not as good as yours and Mordo's. Being a temple guardian is already a struggle. At the critical moment it's still hard to stand alone. Also, although Hamel and Daniel are excellent, they are a little inferior to me, and they cannot take on big responsibilities. So now Taj seems to be thriving, but in fact there is no successor to the ancient master." As Wang said this, he thought of a once amazing magic genius. Shaking his head, the king continued to say to Ned, "Your appearance has broken this situation. With your talent, as long as you continue to develop well, your achievements in magic will definitely not be lower than that of the ancient master. I just need more experience to be the perfect candidate for the supreme mage, but now." Although Taj does not engage in discrimination, no matter what you do without a hand, it will be inconvenient after all. If you are unable to turn the tide, many of Taj's disciples may not accept you. This boy Wang is usually very quiet, but today he made a shocking statement. Even Ned was shocked by his analysis of Taj. Just as he was about to speak, he heard a sting and a portal suddenly opened in the room, and Ji Yuyi's slender figure slowly walked out. "Master Ancient One. Master Ancient One." Ned and the king stood up and said. Ji Yu nodded and glanced at Modu who was meditating on the wooden bed. A transparent container filled with green liquid appeared out of thin air in his hand and handed it to Ned. "Drink it once a day and drink it in 7 days. Come find me after drinking it. I will reshape your broken arm." Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Wang was still wondering what Ji Yuyi was holding in his hand, but when he heard Ji Yuyi's words, he immediately understood and exclaimed, "Is this the legendary Tai Xuanshui?" "Good." Ji Yuyi nodded with satisfaction. Wang's knowledge reserve has always been bottomless. Today, he could recognize Tai Xuanshui at a glance. Her cultivation was not in vain. It is said that the combination of Tai Xuanshui and flawless holy lotus root can annihilate the physical body. If the soul is still there, it can reshape the physical body. It will not be a problem to add another arm to Ned. But these two things are both treasures passed down from ancient times to the Qingwei sect of the Eastern Tao sect. They are closely guarded and never exposed. This has even made the world wonder whether the so-called Tai Xuanshui and Wuxia sacred lotus root are just legendary things really existing in the world. Wang still couldn't believe what method Ji Yuyi used to obtain these two world-shattering treasures from those stubborn Taoist priests. Seeing the king's appearance, Ancient One smiled softly and said, "Ned's arm was injured by an elder of a local force in the multiverse, so I just went to ask them for advice, and made the other party seriously realize the heinous evil committed by his own elders. Feeling deeply regretful, the other party gave me the sacred object of Junpai as compensation for Ned's arm. As a result, I took a look and found that the so-called sacred object was just half a piece of ancient jade with a mysterious aura. When I was young, I also liked to cause trouble everywhere. I once saw another half-piece similar to it in the secret realm of Qingwei sect, so I temporarily changed my route and went to Qingwei sect, and exchanged the ancient jade with them for this heavy set. The treasure of body shaping. Qingwei secret realm. It is said that there are not only the corpses of the ancestors of the Qingwei sect, but also countless treasures passed down from ancient times. However, the exterior is tightly guarded and the interior is heavily guarded. It can be said to be the most dangerous place in the world. Your Majesty, you actually walked through it. The Ancient One smiled slightly when he heard the king's words, and then calmly stepped out of Ned's house and walked to his quiet room. The king was left alone to continue to be surprised. As for Ned, he never read any books other than advanced magic. After listening for a long time, I only knew that the water in front of me was called Tai Xuanshui. It had an extraordinary origin and could give me another arm. I didn't understand anything else. I didn't understand why the king was surprised at all. Is Ji Yi super powerful? Isn't that normal? Ned opened the container in his hand and drank 1/7 of it in one gulp. After putting it away, Ned said to the king, "It's been so long, I want to go home and have a look. Please tell Master Yi, lest she look for me but not know where I am." Seeing the king nodding, Ned stood up, changed his clothes, left Kamar, went directly to the Hong Kong temple through the portal, and then stopped a car on the road to go home. Looking at the familiar yet unfamiliar scenery along the way, Ned felt quite complicated. Bang bang bang. After a knock on the door, an old lady who was obviously much more haggard than a year ago opened the door. She looked up and saw Ned and asked politely, "Sir, who are you looking for?" "Grandma. I'm Ned." Ned was silent. The old man in front of him should still be full of energy when the three spiders were in the same frame, but at this time, it was only 2013, and she was already so haggard. Even Ned could feel that there was not much life in her body. And all this is because of Ned. Because of his disappearance, there is no light in the life of this old man who depends on his grandson. "Ned." The old lady was stunned for a moment, then grabbed Ned and said, "You." The old lady was stunned. She tried to grab Ned's hands with both hands at the same time, but only one of her hands succeeded. The other hand was now tightly holding an empty sleeve. "Child." The old lady hugged Ned hard and cried after all. She couldn't imagine what experience had made Ned so thin. She didn't recognize that he was her grandson at first sight, and she couldn't imagine what made Ned so thin. "My grandson lost an arm." Ned could only silently hug the old man in front of him. Although he felt uncomfortable, he couldn't cry with empathy. Without him, this is just Ned's grandmother after all. Although she is Ned now, they didn't get along for long, so there is no pure emotion like between grandparents and grandchildren. The discomfort at this time was mostly due to the basic morality in his heart, but the more it was like this, the more uncomfortable Ned became. In the end, Ned sighed heavily. He knew that no matter what, he must let the old man do what he did next. No more regrets in life. "Grandma, let's go into the house." After the old lady calmed down, Ned said softly. "Ah." The old lady was helped into the house by Ned. As soon as she entered the house, she said to Ned, "They all said that you were killed by aliens in Manhattan. Everyone said so, but I don't believe it. My grandson is very clever." The old lady said with a proud expression on her face, and then added, "So I will go in and clean your house every few days, and I will ensure that your precious toys are cleaner than when you left." Ned had never experienced this kind of family affection in his previous life, so he didn't know what to do at this time. He could only nod in agreement no matter what the old lady said. After a while, due to the previous violent fluctuations in emotions, the old lady gradually fell asleep. Ned sighed when he saw this, and then used magic to gently lift the old lady back to his bed, quietly closed the door and left. When he came to the street, Ned let out a heavy breath, and then wanted to take out the phone but remembered that he had left the vibranium phone with Huang Shiwen. Thinking of Huang Shiwen, Ned felt even more uncomfortable. Boom. After giving a heavy kick to the trash can on the side of the road, Ned stopped a car and headed towards the Stark group. Although this world is his original world and all the corresponding information is available, as Grandma said, in the eyes of others, he died in the New York War. In other words, he is now a dead person, and among all the people Ned knows, only Tony Stark can quietly bring him back to life. "I want to see Tony Stark. Please report the secret technique to the superiors," Ned said helplessly to the security guard who stopped him, but before he finished speaking, Ned suddenly saw a familiar figure. Hey, Happy. Ned also had a relationship with Happy in the Avengers 4 timeline, and he actually looked similar to the one in the movie, so even though Happy was still a big, energetic fat man at this time, Ned still recognized him at a glance. "Sir, I don't know if you are the media or something else, but what I want to tell you is that there are many people like you who try their best to see Mr. Stark every day. So please stop messing around here. otherwise tomorrow's news headlines may be that Stark Group security guards beat disabled people. This security guard had not looked at him since Ned arrived. He thought that as long as he ignored Ned, Ned would leave on his own. But when he saw that Ned dared to target his immediate boss, the security guard suddenly couldn't sit still and blocked Ned with his broad body and said, "What happened?" Happy originally came to pick up Pepper after get off work according to Stark's instructions, but suddenly he heard someone calling his name, and the person even got into an argument with the security guard at the door. Happy, who had a strong sense of responsibility in his heart, saw this suddenly, as if he had been given a shot of blood. He strode towards Ned and the two of them. "Sir, it's those annoying media who want to see Mr. Stark. I promise to take care of it." Seeing Happy coming, the security guard who was afraid of losing his job hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. "Hey, Happy, I'm Ned, Ned Leeds. I have a nickname called Mystic Mage. You may not know me, but Stark must know." The reason why Ned revealed his identity so hastily in public was because he had already obtained the information he needed through the taxi driver on the way here. Although the Avengers became famous through the Battle of New York and became a household name in New York, no one in New York had ever heard of the Arcane Mage. The image Ned showed in the Battle of New York was cute. The citizens vividly call it Evil Ghost. The reason is that the mask of pain that Ned wears on his face is really terrifying, like an evil spirit. Ned was silent about this, and although he didn't like the nickname, it obviously wouldn't change because of his personal wishes. "You don't need to say anything." Happy interrupted Ned before he could finish and said, "You can come upstairs with me, or you can stay in the lounge for a while, and come with me to Mr. Stark's house later." There was a hint of arrogance in Happy's tone, but he inexplicably showed a lot of trust in Ned. "You must know that he is here to pick up Pepper, which means that Ned and Pepper will be riding in the same car. It is absolutely impossible to treat someone who is not very trustworthy." So Ned was not unhappy because of Happy's tone and said, "Thank you, I'll wait for you in the lounge." "Ah." Happy nodded, then took off his name tag and handed it to Ned and said, "Miss Potts is always very dedicated, so you may have to wait a little longer. If you are bored, you can use this to get around the building unimpeded." Quote. "Thank you." Ned reached out and took Happy's badge. Happy saw this and said nothing more. He turned around and walked towards the exclusive elevator, but before leaving, he glanced at Ned's empty left sleeve. If Ned hadn't been extremely alert after many battles, he probably wouldn't have been able to detect Happy's obscure glance. Happy shouldn't discriminate against disabled people, right? There didn't seem to be any estrangement between Rhodes and Happy after he broke his leg. Single quote. Ned was thinking to himself as he walked to the lounge under the leadership of the front desk lady who was ordered by Happy. Only the huge security guard was left sweating on the spot. Before he could finish a sentence, Happy personally promised to take a car with him to see Stark later. This was all the other business tycoons who came to Stark to discuss business. Treatment that I have never received before. In the elevator, Happy's expression became serious and he said, "Jarvis." "Mr. Bane." Jarvis's voice rang in the elevator. "Yes, the entire Stark Tower is actually under Jarvis' surveillance, but he doesn't usually show it. I need you to contact your boss, something big has happened." Happy said with a very serious expression. "Mr. Stark is upgrading the new generation of steel armor. Please leave a message and I will convey it to Mr. Stark as soon as possible." Jarvis said. "Okay," Happy said with a very serious expression. "The secret mage is back, the grandson of the old lady that the boss once asked me to take care of secretly, Ned Leeds, he is back. And more importantly, he broke an arm. The most powerful and mysterious superhero of the Avengers, the villain, suddenly returned after a year of disappearance, and an unknown person cut off his left arm. I believe this news must be taken seriously by the boss. Maybe there will be new, powerful enemies appearing, and the boss needs to be prepared for this. Okay, Mr. Hogan, Mr. Stark will receive your message as soon as possible. Goodbye." After Happy finished speaking, Jarvis's voice sounded. "Goodbye." The sound fell and the elevator door opened at the same time. Happy walked out in a hurry and went straight to Pepper's office. He decided to rudely interrupt Pepper's work today, even though Stark had wanted him to do so. Happy believes that figuring out Ned's arm and preparing for the upcoming enemies are far more important than Pepper's dozens of minutes of office work. Boom. "Oh, Happy." Pepper looked at Happy who broke into the door and made a huge noise, and he was in a bad mood. If it weren't for Happy, who was already regarded as family by Pepper and Tony, if it were anyone else, even a very important figure in the group would definitely be severely punished by Pepper. But little Pepper also knew that Happy was not such a reckless person. After calming down his frightened heartbeat, he asked, Happy, what's wrong with you? I'm sorry, but you have to leave work early today. Happy saw Pepper's reaction and knew that he was a little rash, so he said apologetically. May I ask why? Pepper asked with a confused look on his face. Aliens are going to invade the Earth again. Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Happy's words are amazing, and Pepper's head is full of questions. What the hell is aliens invading the Earth? Aliens invading Earth. Happy, this is no joke. Little Pepper couldn't sit still anymore. She hurriedly sorted out the documents on the table and took them into her hands. She looked at Happy and said seriously, I'm not kidding. Happy stepped forward to take Pepper's folder and said, only the boss's place is safe now. We have to go back quickly. It is good. Pepper panicked again for no reason. Without him, Coulson came to Stark in such a hurry during the last battle in New York. And if aliens really invade the Earth, then Tony will definitely not stay out of it, but Pepper was so confused that she didn't even notice that Ned was beside her on the way downstairs. This also made Ned, who was smiling and wanted to say hello, look awkward. The Pepper in his memory was a very polite person. Something must have happened that caused her not to notice him. Well, that must be the case. It wasn't until they got to the car that little Pepper discovered that there was one more person traveling with him. He glanced at Happy and found that he had no expression about it. He knew this and Happy also knew about it, so this person must be one of his own. Hi. Pepper smiled and greeted Ned. Hi Miss Potts, I'm Ned. Ned replied with a smile. Hi Ned, I'm sorry I didn't notice you just now. There have been too many bad things lately. Pepper said awkwardly. That's very kind of you, Miss Potts. Ned smiled back. When Happy arrived at Stark's villa in Malibu, he personally took Ned in. This time Happy's attitude was extremely humble, and he was bent over all the way. Ned was very embarrassed and said, Mr. Hogan, what are you? Just call me Happy. Happy said with a smile. Mr. Mystic Mage, I am your loyal fan. Oh, Happy, what are you talking about? As your boss, I am very disappointed in you. Before Happy could finish his words, he was suddenly interrupted by a frivolous voice. Tony Stark, who was holding a wine glass, slowly walked over, took a vague look at Ned's sleeves and said in surprise, wow. Big fat guy. Get fit. Do you also want to learn from Rogers and tour the country? Put on your fancy clothes and the shawl of your grandma's youth. Are you going to sell nutritional solutions or weight loss pills? Tony Stark took a sip of the wine in his hand and said, no matter what it is, I will definitely buy it and give it to Happy. Oh, boss, are you starting to dislike me already? Before Ned could speak, Happy's aggrieved voice could be heard beside him. Yes, as Iron Man's bodyguard, you have too much fat on your body. Tony Stark said hurtfully. Oh, Happy walked away sullenly. Tony. As soon as Happy walked aside, Pepper hurried in, calling Tony's name as he ran. He was relieved to see him and said, Tony, Happy said that aliens are going to invade the Earth again. How is this going? Puff. Stark, who had just taken a sip of wine and hadn't yet swallowed it, spat it out when he heard Pepper's words. Regardless of Pepper's ugly expression, he first ordered Jarvis to clean up, and then looked at Pepper in disbelief. Said, what did you say? As he spoke, Stark sat down on the sofa. He put down the slightly trembling wine glass without leaving any trace, and put his hands in his pockets to prevent others from noticing his abnormality. In fact, his hands were trembling crazily now. Ever since the Battle of New York, the endless interstellar battleships opposite the portal left an indelible impression on him, so he has been frantically upgrading his armor since then. Now, in just a year, he has upgraded his steel armor. More than a dozen versions. Happy says aliens are going to invade Earth again. Pepper said again. Stark heard this and turned to look at Happy. Happy scratched his head and said, Mr. Leeds is missing a hand. Doesn't this mean that a powerful enemy will come to the Earth? Stark turned his attention to Ned again. All right. Although the guy who broke his arm definitely had no chance to invade the Earth, Ned also thought of something that would happen in 2013, so he said, please call Dr. Banner, his strength is needed. Are aliens really invading the Earth? Stark thought that Happy was overreacting, because in his opinion, since Ned had come back, the trouble must have been solved, otherwise why would he still have time to chat with him? When he heard that Ned wanted to call Dr. Banner, he was shocked and asked, "Your trouble has not been solved. Did you go to an alien planet during the year you disappeared?" "No, it's not my problem," Ned said. "The celestial convergence is about to occur. This time the trouble comes from Asgard's old enemy, the Dark Elves. The battlefield will be somewhere in the UK. We need to call Thor." "Okay." Stark curled his lips. Every time aliens invade the Earth, it seems to be inseparable from this, God's domain. I have become accustomed to it. Well, actually there was an invasion that had nothing to do with Asgard. Ned couldn't help but corrected. "Oh." Stark raised an eyebrow. "You can ask Nick Fury about the specific situation. He knows this matter very well." Ned continued. "Because the opponent this time is extremely powerful, Barton, Natasha and Rogers do not need to notify them. Even if they come, they will not be able to help." After hearing this, Stark finally became serious, because if he didn't use rogue kiting or fire coverage, these three people would have a huge headache even for him. However, Ned said that they were too weak and did not need to play at all. "What other preparations are needed?" asked Stark. "Surveillance on Thor's friend, Dr. Eric, who is in charge of the development of the cosmic cube. When he becomes mentally ill, that means war is about to begin." Ned thought for a moment and finally said, "Ah." Stark expressed his approval of Ned's plan. "So, Peter still told you my true identity, and Happy, he also knows." Everything was arranged, and Pepper was comforted by Stark and left, leaving only Ned and Tony in the living room. Ned took the Coke handed over by Jarvis, took a sip and said, "Of course, you don't know how frightened that child was by your disappearance." Stark calmed down, hid his anxiety well, and continued to look like he didn't deserve a beating and said, "Perhaps it's because you kept reminding me when you didn't disappear." The kid was still calm a few days ago, but in just 3 days, he climbed into Happy's car alone in a one-piece pajamas. "Ask me to use my power to find you. Since you are looking for someone, of course you need to know specific information, right?" Ned nodded when he heard this. He could also understand Peter at that time. You must know that he was only a teenager and an underage child. It was already very good to be able to achieve this level. "What about S.H.I.E.L.D.? Do they know about my situation?" Ned asked again. "Ah." Tony nodded and said, "But only Nick Fury knows. You have to understand that although I have some energy, when it comes to finding people, in some places, spy organizations like them are better. So after Jarvis searched for you for a week with no results, I went to Nick Fury and mentioned this matter to him. In the end, the old boy said that there was a problem within S.H.I.E.L.D. He didn't dare to call anyone around anymore. It would be okay if he was just looking for evil spirits. But if you are looking for a high school student, then people in S.H.I.E.L.D. may bring danger to the high school student and his family. Therefore, only Nick Fury in S.H.I.E.L.D. knows about this matter, and even Barton neither Romanov nor I know. Is there something wrong within S.H.I.E.L.D.? Ned keenly captured the information revealed in Tony Stark's words. Of course he knew there was a problem within S.H.I.E.L.D., but was it too early to expose this problem? The Battle of New York had just ended. "Yes," Stark gloated. "Remember the S.H.I.E.L.D. commando you killed?" Afterwards, Nick Fury said that the order he gave them contained many contents, but it definitely did not include conflict with the Avengers, so he later used his power in S.H.I.E.L.D. to investigate the matter. Quote. "And then you discovered a serious problem." Ned said he was a very good supporter. "Of course not. I actually checked it over and over again, and every time there was no problem." Stark said. "But this is the biggest problem, because this means that there is another force within S.H.I.E.L.D. that deceived Nick Fury, and no one knows how powerful this force is. According to Nick Fury himself, he has no one available. Now Romanoff and Barton have been sent out by him to carry out the most secret tasks. But actually the two of them are on vacation in New York right now. This is the last backup Nick Fury has left for himself. To put it harshly, Nick Fury can no longer protect himself." Ned pondered after listening to Stark's words. According to this, the Winter Soldier is about to appear, and the relationship between Captain America and Tony. In other words, we can't count on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s power this time. Ned asked again. "Actually, it's the same with or without them. There's not even a nuclear bomb threat, right?" Tony Stark shrugged. "Okay." Ned stood up and said, "Do you want to feel the power of God?" Communicate with God across thousands of miles of space. Oh, Tony Stark became interested. Heimdall. 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 Cough, cough. In a clearing, Tony Stark, wearing a suit and opening his mask, raised his face to the sky like a fool and shouted loudly. Is this what you mean by ignoring spatial distance and communicating with God? After coughing violently several times, Tony Stark stared at Ned with both eyes. He suspected that Ned had deceived him into thinking he was a fool. Of course, if you keep shouting, Heimdall can hear us. We are Thor's comrades on Earth, and he will not ignore us. There was no smile on Ned's face, at least Tony Stark didn't notice it. I'll shout 3 more times at most. If the so-called guardian god still doesn't say anything, I'll use the palm cannon to make your hairstyle look like Nick Fury's. Tony Stark said viciously, then raised his face to the sky again, put his hands on his mouth in the shape of a trumpet. Heimdall. Heimdall. Ocean. Midgardian, what's the matter? Heimdall's voice suddenly appeared in Tony Stark's mind, making him jump. We need Thor to come to Earth. We have something very important to discuss with him, about the next enemy and the gathering of celestial bodies. Ned also felt Heimdall's undisguised gaze and spoke directly. One thing to say is that Heimdall actually doesn't take Tony Stark to heart at all, but Ned is different. As the most promising disciple of the Ancient One, Ned is very likely to be the next supreme mage. Heimdall must give him a face. I will tell the prince and report it to the God King. Heimdall's voice appeared directly in Ned's mind. Okay, thanks. It's my duty. So, I'm your ringtone. After Heimdall's gaze left, Tony Stark stared at Ned in disbelief and said, No, of course not. Ned shook his head. Then what do you mean? Tony Stark didn't accept Ned's perfunctory response. But what happened to that patron saint that I called until I was hoarse? You two actually had a good time chatting. Then, will you come next time? Ned didn't know how to deal with it, so he could only say this tentatively. Quote. Tony Stark said he was depressed. I am a dead person now and I need you to bring me back to life. Back in the living room, Ned once again took a new cup of Coke from Jarvis and said to Tony Stark while drinking it. I'll let Jarvis do it. The sullen Stark replied, and then he saw how displeased Ned was, and finally said, Aren't you leaving yet? Mr. Leeds, who is eating and drinking? I'm just drinking. As Ned spoke, he took another piece of fruit from the table and gnawed it. While eating, he whimpered and said, This is called eating and drinking. Ned didn't run around in the next few days. He just stayed at home with his grandma while waiting for Thor's arrival. In addition, he drank Tai Xuanshui non-stop every day. As a result, a week passed in the blink of an eye, and I don't know what situation Thor is in. He hasn't come yet, and Ned has also reached the day of rebirth after breaking his arm. Master Ancient One. Ned came to Kamar Ancient One's quiet room and said respectfully, Well, come with me. When Ancient One saw Ned arriving, he nodded and opened a portal and walked in first. Ned followed closely behind. After passing through the portal, as expected, there was another vast expanse of snow, with the cold wind whistling and causing flakes of snow to hit his face. That is to say, Ned has already achieved enough cultivation and can use magic in the cloak on his back to avoid the severe cold. If Doctor Strange comes here, I believe it won't be long before he will take the initiative to break his previous knowledge and learn the portal. Tread, tread, tread. Ned followed Ancient One all the way forward, his feet making a treading sound on the snow. After walking for a while, he saw white mist filling the front and a biting cold air. Ned was already slightly affected before he even got close. At least I can no longer move as freely as I did when I first arrived in this snow. Seeing that Ancient One in front of him walked straight into the white mist without stopping, Ned gritted his teeth and hurriedly followed. After a while, Ned followed Ancient One to the center of the white mist. At this time, Ned was rubbing his hands and stamping his feet. There was even frost condensation on his face. There was nothing he could do about it. The white mist was too weird. Germany can't isolate its cold air by any means. Even the levitation cloak on her back was shivering from the cold. Of course, only she knew whether it was because of the cold or to keep in line with Ned. On the other hand, Ji Yuyi still behaved freely and was not affected by the white mist at all. I saw Ji Yuyi and his two hands changing rapidly in front of him, forming mysterious runes floating in front of him one after another. Open. A standard Chinese sound came out of Ji Yuyi's mouth, and the white mist around him suddenly seemed to be stimulated by something. It changed from its previous calm posture and actually started to circle around Ned and Ancient One. Boom! The strong wind brought by the swirling white mist hit Ned like a sharp blade, leaving traces of blood on him. Ned's eyes were even blown so hard that he could not open them at all. Just when Ned was miserable, Ancient One's voice suddenly sounded in his ears. Why didn't you use the protective spell? Immediately, Ned noticed an energy protecting him, and the cold wind could no longer hurt him at all. Opening his eyes quietly, Ned saw a glowing golden protective shield covering himself and Ancient Yi, while outside was a strange white mist whistling and swirling. Quote. Ned looked at the protective shield above his head and felt speechless and embarrassed. Without him, he would also have this protective shield. After an unknown amount of time, the sky and earth regained clarity, and a cold water pool appeared out of thin air in front of Ned and Ancient One. Inside the pool was the purpose of Ancient One and Ned's trip, the flawless holy lotus root. First, you need to let your spirit body come out. Ancient One spoke. Ned did as he was told, and his spirit body quietly left his body. Ancient One nodded, then waved his hand neatly, and a golden light flashed. Before Ned could react, Ancient One had cut off his left arm from the root. I saw the left arm of Ned's spiritual body being cut off from the body smoothly by the golden light of Ancient One, and then dissipated into nothingness. Now Ned is not only physically disabled but also fundamentally disabled. You must know that although Ned's left arm was chopped off by a man in black robes before, his spiritual body has sound limbs. As long as there is a chance, he can use his spiritual body as his body. According to the physical body repaired, but now. Well, perhaps because Ancient One's technique was too smooth, Ned didn't react until his left arm completely dissipated. Both his spirit and physical bodies showed painful expressions at the same time. If Ancient One hadn't been in front of him, Ned would have screamed. Ding! Shish! Next, Ji Yi didn't give Ned a chance to speak. As soon as he pointed, a white light flew out from the flawless holy lotus root in the cold pool and shot directly into Ned's spirit body. As the white light entered his body, Ned felt a sense of coolness coming over him, and even the pain of his broken arm was suppressed. Immediately, little bits of holy aura were seen on Ned's body, and gradually gathered on his left arm. A burst of white light lit up, and Ned's left arm, which had just been chopped off by Ancient One, grew again, and it revealed a different aura. Seeing this, Ancient One nodded, took out a small piece of flawless holy lotus root from the cold pool and placed it on the left shoulder of Ned's body. As soon as the holy lotus root came into contact with Ned's body, it trembled violently. After dissipating Ji Yuyi's power, it turned into a white jade arm and grew on Ned's body with a pop. Ned looked at his body and felt uncomfortable. It was not because of anything else but because the arm transformed by the holy lotus root was so unique. Originally, Ned's skin color was not white but not very dark either. However, now that he has been connected with the flawless sacred lotus root, his arms and body look like Steve Rogers and Nick Fury standing together. As soon as Ned opened his mouth, before he could tell his purpose, he was waved by Ancient One and thrown directly back to Kamar. His spirit body was also sent back to his physical body by Ancient One while he was moving. Boom! Looking at the tightly closed wooden door in front of him, Ned looked blank at first, then curled his lips and muttered in a low voice, I just want to reshape my whole body with that lotus root. How stingy. Obviously in the cold pool there are so many more. Boom! As soon as Ned's voice fell, he suddenly felt as if he had been hit hard. After a moment of dizziness, he appeared in the bedroom of his home. In front of his eyes, a large golden character condensed by mana read, Get out. Quote. Ned stopped talking and dug through the closet to find a short-sleeved shirt to cover his hand. Ned planned to go out and buy some gloves. Without him, he couldn't really show off with such a white hand, right? In fact, it is not impossible to be white at all. The key is that only one hand is white, which is too embarrassing. On the way back after putting on his gloves, Ned saw someone abducting an underage girl. Ned, who had a strong sense of justice, immediately stepped forward and was knocked down by the opponent with 3 punches and 2 kicks before he realized something was wrong. Well, Ned squatted on the ground with both hands covering his nose that was bleeding from the opponent's punch. Tears were rolling in his eyes. This was a physiological reaction. It was definitely not that Ned was crying because he was beaten. Absolutely not. What should this guy do? The strong man who knocked Ned down with one punch asked the person next to him. Kill him, the man said with a cold face without any emotion in his tone. No, the abducted underage girl in Ned's eyes was obviously frightened by this man's words and said, he is not a bad person. The person who was about to take action stopped when he heard the girl's words and looked at the leader hesitantly. When they came out, they were told that this group of people were in a special situation and that they should try not to cause unnecessary conflicts with them. I said, kill him. The leader glanced at his subordinates with cold eyes, and the subordinates suddenly became excited. Without saying a word, they took out the dagger from their arms and walked towards Ned. Do not, the girl exclaimed and wanted to run towards Ned, but was tightly held by the big man beside her. The leader didn't even look at her. If his subordinates didn't know, didn't he know? This group of people is said to have special circumstances, but in fact they are just a group of experimental subjects. After being brought back, they will all sacrifice themselves for human experiments with almost zero success rate. The reason why they are not allowed to conflict with them is that the superiors are worried that if there are successful experimental subjects, they will leave the organization due to conflicts with them. However, I don't know how many human experiments have been conducted since the beginning of this experiment. If it was really that easy to succeed, superhumans would have been everywhere by now, and there would be no need for the Avengers to show off. Do not. The young girl watched in despair as the man in black walked toward Ned with a dagger, and her young heart was filled with self-blame. Ned squatted on the ground, watching these guys discuss his life and death without any scruples, and he didn't feel too angry. In the world of the Amazing Spider-Man, he had seen many such ignorant people. What really made him angry was that the little girl didn't seem to be forced, but she didn't seem to be with this group of people. So, were they really abducting underage girls? Humph. When the guy with the dagger came closer, Ned snorted and jumped into the air, kicking the guy in the nose. Ned was very vindictive. The reason why he was knocked down by a punch just now was actually because Ned did not take them seriously and only thought that he could easily deal with them with his own fighting skills. Therefore, he did not use magic to strengthen himself, and his attributes in all aspects were still the same as those of normal people, which is why he was so vulnerable. But once they fought, Ned discovered that the man opposite him was far superior to ordinary people in terms of strength and speed, and was almost like a well-trained agent. Coupled with their unusual dialogue, Ned immediately treated them as supernatural events. With all his strength, this group of ordinary people was of course easily dealt with. I said, you guys don't take me seriously, right? Ned's tone did not fluctuate at all, just like talking normally, but it was just like this that made the leading guy even more angry. Who are you? The leader knew the strength of his men, and even he himself didn't see Ned's actions clearly, so he reached into his arms to take out his gun and asked in a cautious voice. Several of the men around him stretched their hands into their arms upon seeing this, and the atmosphere suddenly became tense. Ned could be beaten into a hornet's nest by them at any time if he was not careful. There is no way. As a native mage on Earth, Ned's biggest shortcoming is that his body is too weak and he cannot even resist bullets at the most basic level. Who am I? Ned's eyes were fixed on the group of people opposite him. The Infinity Gauntlet appeared silently on his right hand, and the Mind Stone shone with little light. Okay. The leader on the other side frowned, immediately took out his gun, pointed it at Ned and said, "Put your hands in front of you." Click. Seeing the leader pulling out a gun, all of his men also pointed their guns at Ned. As long as Ned didn't comply, they promised to let Ned see his brains. Okay. Ned curled his lips and said, "Put away the gun and tell us your origins, superiors, and mission." The leader and all his men had cold expressions when they heard Ned's words. They were about to take action but suddenly froze in place. Then a blue light flashed slightly in their eyes, and they naturally retracted their guns. When they were about to speak, Ned stopped them. "You guys go first. Stand aside." Pulling the guys apart, Ned looked at the abducted girl and said, "Can you tell me your name?" The more Ned looked at her, the more he felt that she looked like the person in his memory, but much younger, so he asked. The girl first looked at the group of strong men controlled by the Mind Stone in surprise, and then timidly whispered, "Wong." Wanda. Wanda's voice was trembling, for no other reason than because she was frightened by Ned's methods. Quote. I knew it. Single quote. Ned was speechless and asked again, "How old are you?" He remembered that Wanda was about the same age as Peter when she appeared on the scene, but now it seemed that Wanda was much younger, which was really weird. 10, 16. Well, it's nutritional deficiencies, stunted growth. Single quote. Ned thought helplessly, then took out a piece of paper from his pocket, wrote down an address and said, "If you want to get the same ability as me, go to the address above in 3 days." After finishing speaking, Wanda stuffed the paper into her pocket without waiting for a reply. Fake. "Don't bully my sister." A can flew toward Ned with a roar. Clang. Ned casually knocked the can away with the infinity gauntlet, ignoring Wanda's frightened look after he was attacked by the can. He glanced at the rebellious teenager running towards him and then joined the group of strong men controlled by the Mind Stone. "Disappear. Are you okay? That fool. Don't let me see him again," Quicksilver said to Wanda nervously. "No, no." Wanda held Quicksilver tightly with both hands. God knows how scared she was when she saw Quicksilver dare to attack Ned. He was afraid that Ned would deal with Quicksilver like he dealt with those people from the mysterious organization. "What's wrong with you? Are you that fool?" Quicksilver said worriedly when he saw Wanda's overly frightened look. While speaking, he did not forget to curse Ned a few words. "No, I'm fine, Pietro, let's go." Wanda was about to cry. Her little hands were clenched and turned white, and she was holding on to Pietro's clothes. "Please, stop talking and let's go." Seeing that Quicksilver was still angry, Wanda begged pitifully. Okay." Quicksilver let out a sigh of relief, then took Wanda's little hand and left together. In the mirror space, Ned glanced at the few strong men standing by respectfully, ignored them, opened a portal leading to his bedroom and walked in. He turned over and lay on the bed, took out his cell phone and called Tony Stark. "Sir, Mr. Leeds is calling." Tony, who was checking his own body, received Jarvis's prompt. His expression became tense and he hurriedly said, "Jarvis, delete all my examination records." Who? After taking a few deep breaths, Tony finally calmed down. To be honest, he was really afraid that others would know about his current situation. And Ned was the person he knew who was most likely to know about it through unknown means. The second one was Nick Fury, this old scheming man, and no one knew how many secret hands he had. Connect. Stark, are you doing that kind of thing? But is this too fast? Do you want me to teach you a secret magic mage's kidney nurturing skills? A simple action coupled with a simple formula, you have to learn. Ned's teasing voice came out just as the phone was connected. "Ned, what do you, a little brat, know? Do you believe that I will ask Happy to tell Grandma what you just said?" Stark retorted and then said, "Tell me, what do you want from me?" "I need Nick Fury's phone number." Ned didn't mince words and spoke directly. "Oh," Stark raised an eyebrow, "why do you want that fool's phone number? You're not short of money and want to make extra money, right?" Ned pondered for a while, and then said with a smile, "Thank you, Stark. I didn't think of this at first. Please give me his phone number." "Okay, Jarvis. Okay, bye." After receiving the message Stark asked Jarvis to send, Ned hung up the phone without saying a word, making Tony Stark's nose burst out of anger. "Which one?" Nick Fury rubbed his eyebrows, answered the phone in confusion and said. He had encountered too many troubles recently, and he felt like he was too weak to do anything. At this time, he didn't think that a phone call out of nowhere would be a good thing. "Nicholas. Joseph. Fury." Ned's voice came from the phone. This was the name Nick Fury himself said in the world of Captain Marvel. He remembered it very clearly. "Who are you?" Nick Fury narrowed his eyes. He hadn't heard this name for a long time. He was no longer the low-level agent, and he no longer had to report his name to others. And everyone else also calls him Fury, so. "I am an occult mage. Of course, you may be more familiar with my other name, Evil Ghost." Ned's deliberate voice, filled with the air of a magician, came from the phone. Fake. After hearing Ned's words, the first thing Nick Fury did was not to ask or find out for himself whether what Ned said was true. Instead, he cursed and hung up the phone, and then shouted to his artificial intelligence, "Delete the call you just made, and encrypt the incoming call indefinitely to block the signal." "Yes, sir." Woo. After some instructions, Nick Fury exhaled heavily, then took out his mobile phone again and dialed, "Stark, have you found your mage friend?" "Of course, doesn't he have something to do with you? What's wrong?" "Stark is tinkering with the armor at this time. He is really insecure now and will only feel better if he stays with the armor." Fake. "I knew it was you who called him. As soon as Nick Fury heard Stark's words, he immediately cursed with a dark face, "You idiot with no brains. I don't know how many pairs of eyes are staring at me now." His call was definitely taken by those secret fools. It's monitored. If his house is bombed by terrorists tonight, it will be your fault. When Stark first heard that Nick Fury dared to scold him, he was ready to use his own methods to teach him a lesson. However, when he heard what he said next, his heart became excited. He couldn't care less about talking to Nick Fury. Fighting. Who would have thought that you, a fool, would be turned into such a miserable state by your own men? I'm going to call Ned right now and let him know about this. Stark didn't hang up on Nick Fury and called Ned directly. Hey, Stark, that old Nick Fury guy might be sick. He was so scared that he hung up the phone when he heard my name. As soon as the call was connected, Ned's voice came out. When he heard Ned's words, Nick Fury's already dark face suddenly turned darker. "Mr. Leeds, I'm afraid it's not good to speak ill of others behind their backs, isn't it?" Nick Fury said deliberately in a deep voice. PFF'd. Ha 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 ha. Fury, he didn't say this behind his back, he said it to his face. Stark burst into laughter immediately. Ned didn't expect that Stark already had the technology for three people to talk on the phone together, so he greeted awkwardly, "Hi, Fury, you're here too, what a coincidence." Ha 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 ha. Stark's unabashed laughter made Nick Fury wish he could travel through space and punch his front teeth out. "Mr. Leeds, that phone call you just made might get you into big trouble, did you know that?" Nick Fury simply skipped the topic and spoke directly to Ned. What? Ned was in a daze. Then Nick Fury said what he just said to Tony Stark to Ned again, and finally said, "You have to be careful about everything from today on. You may not be afraid of those bugs in the dark, but the old lady at home." Ned did not expect that one of his phone calls would cause such a big trouble, nor did he expect that things would develop so quickly. He thought that now that Nick Fury was still alive, Hydra would not dare to be too blatant. After pondering for a while, Ned said, "Then can you come out? It's at Stark's house. First of all, you need to know what I want to say when I call you. In addition, I have a plan that can solve S.H.I.E.L.D's internal problems. At the very least, it will not allow hidden dangers to break out in a short period of time. A powerful enemy will appear during this period, which is not the time for internal riots. It is good." Nick Fury was not interested in what Ned said he wanted to know or in any inexplicable plot, but he keenly captured the big enemy will appear in Ned's words. After the Battle of New York, Nick Fury carefully looked at the cameras that could be collected on the battlefield at that time, and finally discovered that all the Avengers, including Thor, were not as mysterious as this so-called occult mage. And what he calls the big enemy. "Hill, I'm going out for a while, please take care of your home," Nick Fury said with a double entendre. Okay. Hill had also noticed something different in S.H.I.E.L.D. a long time ago. When he saw Nick Fury suddenly going out, he looked at him and said meaningfully. Putting aside the riddles that Nick Fury and Hill, the old and tactful partners, were playing, Ned waved to open a portal and went directly to Stark's home. "Oh, shit," Tony Stark exclaimed and said, "Next time you come, can you walk through the front entrance?" As he spoke, Tony Stark took an exaggerated deep breath and leaned on the robot arm behind him, while hiding his wildly trembling hands behind his back. At the same time, the steel armor that had been activated in the laboratory also slowly returned to its original state. Yes, Tony Stark was so frightened by Ned that he had another anxiety attack. Fortunately, the considerate Jarvis controlled a robot arm used to bring tea and water and ran over in time, otherwise he would definitely be like this now. Already sitting on the ground. Is that an exaggeration? Ned said indifferently at first, and then suddenly thought of something. The Infinity Gauntlet instantly appeared on his hand, and the Mind Stone on it bloomed with a yellow light and slowly penetrated into Tony Stark's body. As the light penetrated, Tony Stark's breathing immediately became calmer. "What is this? It refreshes me." Stark completely returned to normal under the influence of the Mind Stone, stood up and said curiously. At the same time, he never mentioned what happened just now. Firstly, he didn't want Ned to know that he had an anxiety disorder, and secondly, because he was so scared by Ned that his legs went weak. This is too embarrassing. How could Tony Stark, the mighty Iron Man, take the initiative to bring up such an embarrassing thing? This is a magic weapon made from the gems on Loki's scepter. In addition, I just used it to calm your mind and treat the symptoms but not the root cause. What's wrong with you? Ned has thought about Iron Man's anxiety disorder, but he doesn't know how to mention it. Moreover, he doesn't have the eloquence of the little boy in Iron Man 3, so he doesn't know how to solve this problem. No, it's okay. I just haven't slept for a long time and am a little dazed. Plus, I was suddenly frightened by you, so I became like that. Stark really didn't want people to see his fragile side and said, but this glove of yours is a bit interesting. I see there are grooves on it. Do you have anything else you want to put on it? If anything, leave it to me. You can always trust Tony Stark's skills. Also, would you like to lend me your gloves for a few days to study? I can pay the rent. Stark said with a raised eyebrow. From the look in his eyes, he seemed to be really interested in the Infinity Gauntlet. Do not. Ned smiled and said something that greatly disappointed Tony Stark. There is no way. Ned dare not give the Infinity Gauntlet and the Mind Stone to Stark, a guy with a criminal record, to study. If he brings out Ultron again, it will not be a joke. Ordinary Ultron is okay. The only trouble is that he exists on the internet and is difficult to eliminate, but if an infinite Ultron is created by mistake. Although Ned had cooperated with the Avengers in the future to kill an Infinity Ultron, but that was only under the premise that he had 6 Infinity Stones in hand and the combat power of everyone in the Avengers had reached its peak. With the current combat power of the Earth, if he came in the case of an Infinite Ultron, then Ned can directly ask Ancient Yi to take him to escape in the world of the Amazing Spider-Man. Without him, although Ancient One is powerful, he is equal to all living beings in the face of nuclear bombs. So, Tony Stark wants to study the Mind Stone. Next life. What did you say? Are you rejecting Tony Stark? After hearing Ned's words, Stark was disappointed at first, and then a stubbornness rose from the bottom of his heart that refused to admit defeat. He raised his face slightly, squinted his eyes like a gentleman, looked down at Ned and said, quote. Seeing Stark's appearance in front of him, Ned finally understood why Mr. Guan was so unpopular. Yes, Ned said as he opened a can of Coke. $1 million. Stark sat on the sofa with his legs crossed, picked up a glass of wine, didn't drink it, just held it in his hand, and said he didn't deserve a beating. It's not a matter of money, it's just not giving. Ned didn't look at him, and replied casually while scanning the environment in the room. $10 million. Hearing Ned's refusal again, Stark's expression remained unchanged, and even a smile emerged. He took a sip of the wine in his hand and said. Finally, he added, I'm talking about one day. Cough. Ned choked on his Coke and turned to stare at Stark. 10 million a day. How about it? Stark looked like he had everything under control, and said with a smile on his face. You and I. Ned's chest rose and fell violently, and finally he gritted his teeth and said, I. Stark. Nick Fury opened the door hard and walked in, shouting loudly. Sir, my system has been hacked. Jarvis's voice also sounded at the same time. Fury, you fool. Stark scolded Nick Fury severely. He also knew that Ned would never agree to him again if Nick Fury interrupted him. He said to Ned, if you are tempted, you can do it at any time. The conditions remain unchanged. Then, without waiting for Ned to reply, he added, okay, you two met at my house, so it's not too much for me to watch, right? Or are you going to have some kind of fencing competition? Then I will definitely avoid it. Tell me, what's the matter? Nick Fury has long passed the age of being angry because of other people's bad words. Without even looking at Stark, he stared straight at Ned and said, also, what did you say about the enemy on the phone? Thing. Ned originally wanted to criticize Stark again, but seeing how serious Nick Fury was, he was too embarrassed to ignore him, so he said seriously, I caught some big men in black who abducted underage girls, and I haven't tried them yet. I think you have to watch. What? Nick Fury's face was full of question marks, and even Tony Stark, who was eating melon and watching the show, didn't know what Ned was really up to. Of course he deserves to be kidnapped by an underage girl, but Nick Fury is in such a state of distress right now that he came to him just to talk about it. Tony Stark firmly believes that if it is to investigate human trafficking, it would be more useful to contact the current Nick Fury than to contact the New York police. But Stark also felt that Ned would not be such an ignorant person, so he said nothing and continued to watch Ned want to say something. Stab. Ned waved his hand and opened a portal. Quote. Stark was shocked. When Ned came over, he noticed that Ned had a glove on his broken left hand, but he just thought that Ned felt that the empty sleeve was too easy to attract attention, so he specially stuffed things into the sleeves and then sewed the gloves on. As a result, at this moment, Ned saw two hands working together to open the portal. What's going on? Your hands have grown. Today's technology can never do this, and what's the so-called magical power? Come out. Ned first shouted to the other side of the portal, and then answered Stark, yes, the Supreme Mage personally repaired my left arm. Wow, that's awesome, Stark exclaimed, then rolled his eyes and said, is your mage organization short of money? What? Ned was stunned. You said that if I donated hundreds of millions of dollars to you for free, would that Supreme Mage allow me to visit your place? Stark became interested in magic, pulled Ned and whispered. As for why Stark knew that there was a mage organization behind Ned, there was no other way. In order to find Ned, the little spider told Stark everything, including using magic to make Aunt May and Grandma comatose on the day of the New York War. Ancient One who picked them up. And with Stark's mind, even if he determined that Ned was definitely not alone, there must be a group of mages like him behind him. Before Ned could speak, Nick Fury on the side spoke. If possible, I also have some spare money on hand. I originally wanted to use it to build a few more safe houses, but if the lives of mages are really difficult, I will be stingy. Nick Fury's ears are not ordinary. I need to report it to the Supreme Mage first. Of course, Ned knew that Nick Fury was not making a free donation, but after all, Kamar had the final say and the Ancient One had the final say, and no matter how greedy he was, he couldn't agree so easily. Let's talk about these guys first, Ned said as he looked at the group of strong men who came out of the portal following his orders. They seem to listen to you, Nick Fury said casually. Loki's scepter, Tony Stark asked while taking a sip of wine. While speaking, his free hand touched his heart with lingering fear. Ned had also used that thing to hit him just now. Yes. Seeing Ned nodding his head in recognition, Nick Fury's eyes flashed with fear. The most feared thing in their line of work was this method. Tell me your organization, superiors, and missions. Ned asked this question in front of Nick Fury and Stark. Hydra, Strucker, take that girl back. The leader of the group lowered his head and said honestly. Fark, do you know what he is talking about? Nick Fury stood up instantly. Don't say bad words. Ned glanced at him and said, if you say bad words again, I will tell Stark how you are blind. Believe me, as long as Stark knows, all your colleagues will know within 3 days, this matter. Nick Fury narrowed his eyes. He told the public that he would rather die than surrender and was blinded by aliens many years ago. But from what Ned meant, did he know the real situation? Nick Fury didn't believe it, because there were only a few people present when his eyes were scratched by the orange cat, and it was absolutely impossible for those people to tell Ned these things again, but Nick Fury thought about it again and again, and finally chose to compromise. He just didn't say bad words. No matter whether Ned really knew the situation or was bluffing, there was no point in arguing with him over this trivial matter. Hydra has been destroyed a long time ago, and your good comrade Steve Rogers is indispensable. Nick Fury stared at Ned with one eye and said, in addition, the top person in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s European branch is called Strucker. I just want you to know this and be careful in the future. As for whether you believe it or not, just feel free to do so. Ned ignored Nick Fury and asked the strong man again, why did you take that girl back? She signed an agreement that Straker sent out in disguise. There are many people like her. Straker wants to use them for human experiments to create superhumans. This matter is really not a secret among them, as long as the little boss with a slightly higher status knows about it. Okay, I'm done with what I wanted to ask. Do you have any ideas about these guys? If not, I'll solve it. Ned asked Nick Fury. Nick Fury's face had long been as dark as his black windbreaker. After hearing Ned's words, he took a few steps forward and groped around on the strong man's body, and finally took out a small black book that should be his ID. When I opened it, I saw that it was David Grassi, a level 4 agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Mom. Nick Fury instinctively wanted to speak out his spoken words, but then thought of Ned's words just now, and forcefully suppressed them. Then he slammed the document in his hand to the ground. With his eyesight, he could tell that the document was definitely not a forgery. In other words, he must pay attention to the information he got today. Especially when a guy in a high position like Strucker is actually a Hydra, so inside their headquarters. You said you have a way to solve my problem. Nick Fury suddenly remembered that Ned called him here today for another reason, that he had a plan to solve this crisis. Yes, Ned nodded and said, but now I'm so poor that I can't even open the pot. $1 million. Make a deal. Ned decisively agreed. He didn't think about blackmailing Nick Fury too much, because this so-called ruse didn't require him to do anything at all. There is a magical race in the universe called the Skrulls. Ned's first sentence made Nick Fury's eyelids twitch, and Tony Stark was instantly interested. They can disguise themselves as any creature they have ever seen, and gain access to the most recent memories of the person they are disguising. Years ago, they came to Earth because of their escape, and after a thrilling battle, they formed a deep friendship with a SHIELD agent at the time. Wait, you mean aliens came to Earth many years ago? Tony Stark interrupted Ned. Yes, and there was also a notorious super villain in the universe eyeing the Earth at that time. Ned's words almost gave Stark another anxiety attack. I want to ask, how do you know those things? Nick Fury looked at Ned, interrupted him and said, at that time, even Stark was just a child, and you were probably not born yet, right? What do you mean? After hearing what Nick Fury said, Stark asked, do you know what he said? Stark suddenly remembered that Ned said that a SHIELD agent at the time had a deep friendship with that alien race. At that time, I was just a low-status third-level agent who needed to go out in the field every day. It just so happened that I met these outsiders during a mission. Nick Fury knew that even if he kept it secret, Ned would tell Stark the details, so he simply said, so, I know very well the situation at that time. There is nothing wrong with what you said, but you shouldn't know these things. Nick Fury said, staring at Ned. Never underestimate the power of an arcane mage. Ned said in a pretentious manner, but the two people across from him fell in love with this trick and immediately stopped asking Ned. So, finally, that super villain. There were no Avengers or various advanced weapons on Earth at that time. Could it be that nuclear weapons were really used? Is nuclear radiation really useful for aliens? Stark said curiously. But I haven't heard of any place where nuclear weapons tests have been carried out. Don't make random guesses. There was indeed no Avengers at that time, but there was a super ant who, like Rogers, liked to walk around in fancy clothes. Puff. Ned's words made Nick Fury spit out the sip of water he had just taken into his mouth. Fury, what's wrong with you? Stark said curiously. Auntie is just an auntie. It's not like she's never seen her before. What's Nick Fury's reaction? Stark, don't listen to Mr. Leeds, nonsense. Carol was actually only in her 20s at the time. Nick Fury corrected. Oh, Stark nodded, that means you are in your 40s now, right? Or even 50. Nick Fury stopped arguing with them, and just gave a final reminder. I advise you that if you see Carol one day, you must not mention our conversation today, and don't call her that, otherwise, your armor will be damaged. She dismantles them like toys. Really? Stark. Ned interrupted the unconvinced Tony and said, what Fury said is true. With your current armor, you can't do anything in Captain Marvel's hands. She can also fly, explode interstellar missiles with her bare hands, and scare away an alien fleet all by herself. Are you sure you're not kidding? The most notorious super villain in the universe was scared away by a woman. Stark said with a raised eyebrow. Yes, his name is Ronan. Ned nodded. Okay. Stark turned to look at Nick Fury again. Then why didn't you let your 50-year-old aunt Superman take action a year ago to scare Loki and his army away? You also let us enthusiastic people go to fight for their lives. Beat to death. Because the time has not yet come. Nick Fury said without any emotional fluctuations at all because of Stark's words. The time has not come yet. Is this your intention or hers? Where is she? New York. Washington. I really want to see this ant. Stark stood up and moved his joints while speaking arrogantly, as if he was very dissatisfied with Captain Marvel and wanted to teach her a lesson. In space, I don't know which planet, or it may be in space, not any planet. Nick Fury said without taking Stark seriously at all. Are you kidding? She stole Ronan's spaceship from an alien villain. There is absolutely no way Earth has interstellar navigation technology. Stark looked unconvinced. Neither, Stark. At this time, Ned said, she can fly in the universe directly with her physical body, and she can do so at extremely fast speeds, and she can even jump through space. Tony Stark stopped talking. You are talking about the Skrulls. Although they have special abilities, they are not good at fighting and do not understand what agents are like. How can they solve the problem? Nick Fury didn't want to talk about this for a long time, so he hurriedly changed the topic and said, used to screen humans and ghosts. Ned said, let them turn into senior agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. one by one, and obtain their recent memories to check whether these senior agents are moles. Even if there is indeed a senior agent who is a mole, you can deal with him directly and use the Skrulls to take over. Do not. Nick Fury disagreed with the second half of Ned's words, because he had experienced colleagues around him being disguised by Skrulls. The Skrulls couldn't even fool him, who was young at that time, let alone the experienced and extremely sharp senior agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The Skrulls have a lot of loopholes in their capabilities and are easy to see through. They cannot be used as Mission Impossible spies, but they can still be used if they are just used to find moles. Nick Fury said as he stood up and prepared to leave, following Ned's suggestion to find the mole. Remember my reward. Seeing that Nick Fury was leaving, Ned hurriedly reminded him. Don't worry, it's only $1 million. Remember what we said before, about letting our men visit Kamar. Go back and ask the Supreme Master. Nick Fury was very covetous of Ned's abilities and reminded him. Don't worry too. Ned finally said. Well, if you want to test senior agents, I suggest starting with the highest one. Oh, Nick Fury looked at Ned with interest and thought, the tallest. Was he alluding to Hill? But Hill should not. Alexander Pierce. Do you know what you're talking about? Nick Fury was startled by the name Ned said, stared at him and said, he promoted me as director. It's just a try. Don't you believe no one? Ned was unmoved and said with a smile. Quote. Nick Fury was silent for a while and left with a dark face. Is that guy Pierce really? Stark asked Ned after Nick Fury left. Ah. Ned nodded. Huh. Stark showed a gloating smile. Now Fury has a headache. As for worrying about Nick Fury, it doesn't exist. Now that the enemies are in front of him, if Nick Fury still plays to death, then he will be too unworthy of the title of King of Agents. Stark, after all, we are comrades who have fought side by side. Is it really okay for you to be so gloating about your misfortune? As soon as Tony finished speaking, Nick Fury came back with a dark face. What was the enemy you said on the phone was about to appear? Nick Fury said looking at Ned. Quote. So, you forgot about it and then suddenly remembered it when you were going out. Stark teased Nick Fury. Nick Fury ignored him and just stared at Ned. Ah, the enemy. Boom. Ned was about to speak when suddenly there was a loud noise outside Stark Villa, which startled the three people in the room, and also interrupted what Ned was about to say. Fark. Jarvis. Ned quickly completed his transformation and put on all the magic weapons used in battle except for the pain mask. At the same time, the iron armor flew out of the laboratory in an instant and was put on Tony Stark. Stark cursed and asked Jarvis what happened. Ned recognized Stark's armor at a glance. It was the Mark 42 steel armor, Prodigal Son. In other words, the Iron Man 3 incident is indeed about to break out. Sir, there was a huge energy fluctuation in front of the door just now. The reason is unknown. Also, this energy comes from the sky, Jarvis said. Oh, give me the camera outside. The camera equipment was interfered with by special energy just now and was completely damaged. Jarvis poured cold water on Stark again. Shet. With a black face, Stark directly crashed through the roof of the building and flew out. He would not stupidly go out through the main entrance, which would hit the enemy's gun. After Stark circled around the roof, his two palm cannons lit up and he pointed at a big man lying on the ground and said, Hey, sir, no matter how you fell from the sky, now, please stand up and let me one shot will smash your face in. Stark. The big man on the ground stood up with difficulty, looked up at Stark, and said with surprise and confusion. Saul. Yes, this man was Thor, the god of thunder. He had just put down one of the most serious riots in the Nine Realms and had a battle with the leader of the rebels. Although he killed the guy, he was also seriously injured. Originally, he thought he could take a nap after calling Heimdall, and then ask the therapist to carry him to the treatment room for treatment. As a result, I found that there seemed to be something wrong with the touch of the ground. Now looking at the steel armor above my head, Heimdall had clearly sent him to the earth. Thor, what are you doing? Stark looked at Thor, whose face was tired and scarred, and even his armor and cloak were damaged in many places, and asked in confusion. He has never seen Thor in such a mess, not even the New York War. Hey, forget it. Find me a place to take a rest. Also, have a dozen beers. After Thor discovered that this was the Earth, his legs no longer hurt and his waist was no longer sore. He turned over and stood up and said with a smile. Ah, looking at the heartless Thor in front of me, for some reason, Stark feels a little sorry for his roof. Hi, Mage, long time no see. Stark led Thor into the villa, and Thor recognized Ned at a glance. Although he was not wearing a mask, he was wearing a wizard's robe and a cape. Oh, you're here too. Thor smiled and patted Nick Fury on the shoulder again. What's going on with you? Ned also asked about Thor's situation in confusion. To be honest, it's really not easy to see Thor who is covered in injuries. Haha, I just put down a riot, and those rebels are no match for me at all. In Thor's opinion, the injuries on his body and the things he did were all the glory of a warrior. Of course, he would not hide them and share them with Ned and others with a smile. By the way, isn't there any beer here, Stark? Coke will do, too. Thor once again took a fancy to the Coke in Ned's hand. Ah, Thor, you. Boom. As soon as Ned spoke, Thor fell down on the sofa before he finished speaking. It seems like he really just finished a very intense battle. Nick Fury said seriously. Jarvis, send our breaking point hero to the guest room. Stark ordered, and then said to Ned and Ned, Thor said that Loki was adopted by Odin. Now it seems that he is not his biological child. He was thrown here just after a battle. This God King is a little too casual with him. Odin should have asked him to come and discuss with us the upcoming enemies and the gathering of celestial bodies that we mentioned to Heimdall last time. Ned said. In addition, I need to remind you that I have a feeling that Heimdall should be watching here. In other words, everything you just said fell on his ears. Quote. Looking at Sol's condition, he should be sleeping for quite some time, so, are you in charge of the food? Ned said to Tony Stark. Quote. I'll have Jarvis get ready. So you called Thor. Nick Fury said. Can't we discuss it first and then tell him that Thor must be responsible? With all due respect, given the character of our great Prince of Asgard, how can we discuss tactics with him? A pre-war meeting. Quote. Well, I think you're right. Stark nodded in agreement. Aren't you afraid that Sol will be sad? Ned said with some reluctance. So what you mean is, I agree with you. Nick Fury and Stark both smiled with satisfaction after hearing Ned's words, and then Nick Fury said, what is the situation of our enemy this time? How does it compare with the Battle of New York? If he is allowed to get what he wants, it will be far more dangerous than the Battle of New York. If he is not allowed to get what he wants, Sol can beat him to death. Ned said. Our enemies this time are called Dark Elves, and the name of the enemy leader is Malekith. They originally lived in Wadalheim and were once the rulers of the entire 9 realms. They were later led by Thor's grandfather, Beat. But although they were driven out to death on the surface, there were actually still soldiers who survived. Now, the gathering of celestial bodies is coming. As long as Malekith obtains his artifact, he can take this opportunity to plunge the entire 9 realms into boundless darkness again. To make the 9 realms fall into darkness together, in addition to the artifact, we also need to find a just right place to display the power of the artifact. Stark heard this and interjected. You must not tell me that this place is Earth. You are right. Not only is the right place the Earth, but even the artifact that Malekith needs was sealed somewhere on the Earth by Thor's grandfather. When Stark and Nick Fury heard Ned say that not only would the next battlefield be on Earth, but the artifact that the alien must obtain was also sealed on Earth by Bol, they immediately cursed together. But as soon as Nick Fury said one word of his catchphrase, he got stuck there, for no other reason than because he thought of the person his words were going to offend this time, and felt that it was too dangerous to scold him with this word. Wow, I thought you would say that sentence very smoothly. In that case, I would definitely give you a thumbs up, then tie you up and give it to Thor myself. Ned said with a smirk, staring at Nick Fury. Humph. Nick Fury snorted coldly, and then said, stop saying these useless words. Now that we know the details of the enemy, what should we do now? There's nothing to do, just clear the area quickly when the fight breaks out. Ned said, I will try to find the terrible artifact sealed by Bol before Malekith. As long as I can intercept it, it will be easy to deal with Malekith. Okay, I'll let Clint and Natasha. No need for them. Before Nick Fury finished speaking, he was interrupted by Ned, saying, This time is different from a year ago. Since Malekith and his men were originally remnant soldiers who were lucky to survive, there are not many miscellaneous soldiers who can give it to Clint and the others. And the more powerful opponents are unlikely to be opponents in their mortal bodies, so there is no need to call them in this battle, including Rogers, he does not need to call. Ned said. I have asked Stark to contact Dr. Banner. Don't worry, we will never let the enemy run rampant on our planet. Okay. Nick Fury nodded, then stood up and left. There was nothing else to do if he didn't leave. He already knew the general situation. He wouldn't be needed during the battle, so of course he didn't need to stay here all the time. Finally, I need you to become an astrophysicist within this limited time. Ned said to Stark after Nick Fury left. Wow, even Tony Stark obviously didn't take Ned's words seriously. He had already experienced doing homework before the war during the New York War, and it wasn't too difficult. Next, Ned watched a movie and waited for Thor to wake up. As for Stark, he went back to tinkering with his armor. Finally, after quite some time, Saul came out of the guest room. Hi, my friend, how long have I been asleep? Earth time, several hours. Ned collapsed on the sofa and said, originally, Stark said he would take care of the food, but because Pepper had something to do and couldn't come back, the depressed Stark took it out on us and cancelled our dinner. It was already 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, and Ned should have gone home long ago. Now that Thor had woken up, Ned quickly said to him, actually, we have something to tell you this time, so Heimdall, that's why I'll send you here. The Dark Elves were not exterminated by your grandfather. Their leader and quite a few warriors survived. Now they are about to make a comeback. Please go back and convince Odin to let Asgard's army prepare for war. In addition, we will contact you through Heimdall again when the war comes. I hope you can come to Earth and we will fight the enemy together. Okay. Thor seemed to have heard it or not, but it didn't matter. He picked up the Coke that Ned had not opened on the table and took a sip. Then he said with a silly smile, no matter what, I want to go out for a while. Come on, I'm going to find Jane. She seems to be in a place you call London. What a strange name, but it doesn't matter. Who? As Thor spoke, he held the hammer in his hand and spun it rapidly. Boom. Thor crashed directly through the roof of the house that Stark had just patched by Jarvis and flew out. FAQ. My roof. Stark's angry voice echoed through the air. Boom. Just when Thor had not flown far and was thinking about how tender he would be when he saw Jane later, a huge colorful beam of light fell from the sky and enveloped him in an instant, leaving a mark on the ground before disappearing. Heimdall. Why? Thor questioned Heimdall as soon as he came out of the Rainbow Bridge. His angry little eyes fluttered, but Heimdall remained calm. This is the king's order. In addition, the king asked you to see him immediately after you come back. HMPH. I see. Thor angrily flew towards Odin's palace. Father, you. Enough. Thor came to Odin's palace angrily, and as soon as he opened his mouth, Odin loudly reprimanded him, don't tell me anything about that Earth woman again. Tell me what your friends on Earth said to you. Well, after hearing Odin's words, Thor was stunned for a moment, and then after thinking for a moment, he smashed his right hand into a fist and his left hand into a palm. Father, are you talking about the Dark Elves in children's books? Don't worry, as long as they dare come here, I will definitely smash their heads with my Mjolnir. Odin stared at Thor for a while, and finally sighed. After being exiled on the Earth, he thought that Thor could barely be called a qualified king, but now he realized that he was wrong. Saul may be qualified in terms of character, but in terms of character, he is clearly a stupid fool. Such a person can only be the leader of a death squad, how can he be the leader of a country? Thinking of this, Odin thought of his other son locked up in the dungeon, and couldn't help but feel even more uncomfortable. Put it all aside for now and go to the Asgard leadership training class to learn tactics and strategies. That's it, you go. Odin became extremely angry when he thought of what the Earth nigger said after sending Thor down just now, so he simply asked Thor to go to the training class to rebuild it again. Father, yes, King Father. Of course, Saul didn't want to go to a boring training class anymore. That place wasn't as interesting as the foreign language classes. But seeing that Odin couldn't refuse, he had no choice but to obey Odin's order. Your Majesty, don't worry, our children will be the best. After Thor left, Queen Frigga came out, hugged Odin and said, I certainly believe that very strongly. Frigga is the softest place in Odin's heart. When he saw Frigga, Odin also showed a gentle smile, hugged Frigga gently and said. After Thor left, Ned also opened the portal and left Stark's villa. When he returned home, Ned fell asleep. The next day, he ate breakfast in a hurry and opened a portal to Kamar. Bang bang bang. Come in. Although Ned had a special status in Kamar, he would not dare to show any disrespect to the Ancient One no matter what. He knocked on the door respectfully and waited. After receiving Ji Yuyi's permission, he opened the door and walked in. After entering, Ned looked up and saw that Mordo was also here, sitting cross-legged on a futon and listening to Ancient One's lecture. Ned's heart suddenly pounded. Today he was going to say two things, each of which was extremely deviant. Of course, it would be nothing in front of an enlightened supreme mage like the Ancient One, but with Mordo's character. Ned, you don't come to me when you're fine. Tell me, what kind of trouble are you in? Ji Yijuan stood up and took a sip of the tea on the table in front of him and said. Mordo also set his sights on Ned. But Ned did not intend to say it in front of Mordo, and bowed to Ben Yao and said, there is something wrong with what the ancient master said. Master, you have worked hard to protect the safety of the earth. This disciple has nothing to do and comes to say hello to the master. Why not? Is it? Ji Yuyi smiled slightly, and then said, Modu, that's it for today, you go back first. Yes. Modu stood up respectfully and bent over, then turned around and opened the door and walked out. He did not question the words of the Ancient One, nor did he feel that there was anything wrong with Ned and the Ancient One speaking to him without letting him hear. As long as it was the words of the Ancient One, it was like an imperial edict to him. Now, do you still want to say that you are just here to pay your respects? The Ancient One teased Ned. The Ancient Master is so wise and powerful that he is unparalleled in the world. Ned knew that he could never hide it from the Ancient One, so he said honestly, Tony Stark said that he planned to donate $100 million to Kamar in a private name, but he needed to come to Kamar to visit it in person. One time. I think he has the idea of our magic. In addition, Nick Fury also has this intention. After hearing Ned's words, Ancient One's expression remained unchanged, and he only said, if that happens, Mordo will smash them to death with the scepter of the Tribunal of Life. For desecrating a holy place. Finally, Ji Yuyi added another sentence. Ned's expression changed when he heard this. No matter what happens to Mordo in the future, for now, his status in Master Kamar-Taj's heart is definitely much more important than that of the so-called Iron Man. This is the case in the hearts of ordinary mages, and I am afraid it is also the case in Ji Yuyi's heart. Even Ned. In any case, Mordo was his guide on the path to becoming a mystic mage. Never again mentioning Tony Stark's desire to visit Kamar-Taj as he cleared the way for gold and silver, Ned also suppressed the idea of Supreme Mage Tony Stark in his heart. I recently discovered a good prospect, who may have a strong talent for learning magic. Do you think he has a talent? Ned spoke again. This is the second thing, about Wanda. That little girl has endless potential, but she is obviously not suitable for our magic. She has her own power, and when she uses it, she will not be weaker than any arcane mage. The Ancient One knew who Ned was talking about, shook his head and said. That power comes from an evil source and may cause future troubles. If possible, you may be able to seal it. Ned. Ji Yuyi's tone suddenly became serious. There is no distinction between good and evil in power. The reason why Kamar-Taj prohibits mages from using the power of other demons is because you are not strong enough to control them, and because none of these demons are good. In addition, you have to remember, don't try to take everything into your own hands, otherwise, as long as there is a slight change, it will be a catastrophic disaster. After Ji Yuyi's words fell, Ned's heart suddenly became clear, and he immediately bowed respectfully and said, I sincerely follow the teachings of His Holiness. Go back. The Ancient One turned his back to Ned. Yes. First teleporting from Kamar-Taj to the New York Temple, and then walking out of the temple on the street, Ned was thinking about the conversation he had just had with Ancient One as he walked. I don't know how long I've been gone. Boom. A loud noise woke up Ned. Ned hurriedly looked around and saw a huge sea of fire not far from him. In the sea of fire, there was a fat man crawling out with difficulty. His figure looked very familiar. Happy. Ned hurriedly opened a portal under Happy, and the other side opened beside him and perpendicular to the ground. Happy's body rolled out of it helplessly. Drink. Ned formed a magic circle with his hands, shouted and injected the golden magic energy into Happy's body to protect his heart. Then a small portal was opened above Happy's body, and the other side was connected to the swimming pool at Stark's house that had never been used before. Puff. After a burst of water flowed through, the flames on Happy's body were extinguished, but the various injuries were beyond Ned's ability. A portal directly sent him to Stark's villa. Ned believed that Stark must have the best equipment to treat Happy. Anyway, with magic protecting his heart, Happy's condition will no longer get worse. After sending Happy away, Ned stood up and looked at the sea of fire in front of him. He kicked off the ground and jumped into the air. At the same time, he completed his transformation in the moment he stood up. He wore the cloak of suspension, the mage's robe and the mask of pain. On the body. Stab. Puff. As soon as Ned opened a huge portal above the sea of fire, a huge wave poured out of it. Seeing this, Ned did not dare to neglect his hands and wildly changed them in front of his chest. Golden magic runes shot out from Ned's hands one after another. Plunge into the water. As Ned's magic runes were shot out, a faint magical aura gradually appeared around the water flow, and the speed also dropped visibly to the naked eye. There is no way, if Ned allows the river water to rush down unbridled, I am afraid that the powerful impact will directly collapse a considerable number of buildings that are about to break. In that case, all casualties will be counted on Ned's head. In short, he is like this thought. Drink. Ned shouted with a look of difficulty on his face, and tried his best to control the water flow to gently disperse into the sea of fire. But Ned couldn't help but realize that the other side of the portal was connected to the Hudson River. Evil ghost. Look, it's an evil ghost. The New York citizens on the ground who were originally preparing to call the police also saw the spectacle of rain falling from the sky and discovered Ned floating in the sky. They immediately forgot about the alarm and shouted in surprise. What? Evil spirit. Wow. It's really him. Quickly take a photo. I'm his fan. Wow. Z. As the river water fell, the fire was extinguished at a speed visible to the naked eye. Evil. Avenger. Well done. Seeing that Ned put out the fire in an instant, passers-by nearby cheered, shouting Ned's nickname and Avenger. But Ned couldn't care about that now. He only saw Ned's hands slowly crossed on his chest, and then quickly separated. In an instant, countless Neds flew out of Ned's body and threw themselves into the ruins below to start a search and rescue operation. While Ned was busy rescuing people, the explosion and the incident where the superhero, evil ghost, rescued citizens and the live video spread rapidly on the internet, making Ned very popular. Ding ding, ding ding ding, hey, yo, what is the matter with your head? Yeah. As a burst of rhythmic music sounded from his waist, Ned in the sky was stunned, because every time he heard this music, Ned couldn't help but think of the man who was abducted by aliens since he was a child and eventually danced to death for the overlord of the universe. Ronan's man. At the same time, I can't forget what War Machine Rhodes said, is he a fool? That's right, this is Star-Lord's exclusive BGM. It was also the ringtone that Ned set. Stark. Ned answered the phone and said, "Tell me, what happened?" Happy almost died. Tony Stark's angry voice came over the phone. I don't know either. I am cleaning up the mess at the explosion site and searching and rescuing people. How is Happy? Ned said concerned. I have already taken first aid measures for him and asked Jarvis to take him to the best hospital in New York. Are there any suspicious signs at the scene? If anything happens to Happy, I will make these fools pay for it with their lives. Tony Stark was on his way to Stark Tower at this time. Something had happened to Happy. If something happened to Pepper, he felt that he would go crazy. The temperature at the scene was very high. There was no other situation. The enemy ran very fast and left before I took action. Okay, I get it. After hanging up the phone, Ned saw that official personnel were approaching, so he opened a portal in the air and left. Of course he knows who the person who attacked Happy this time is, but this incident will be an indispensable test for Iron Man, and Ned has no intention of intervening. Another day passed, and as expected, in addition to the report about the evil ghost rescuing people, Iron Man revealed his address and declared war on terrorist organizations. Not long after, Ned received a call from Pepper Potts, asking him to help find Stark's whereabouts. Of course, Ned agreed first, then turned around and forgot about the matter, and plunged into Kamathajay's library. After the guidance of the Ancient One, Ned felt that he could learn some new magic that required more character than talent. The day passed in a blink of an eye, and Ned arrived at the place he and Wanda had agreed upon. Ned thought he had arrived early enough, but found that Wanda was already waiting for him. You're here. Wanda is still a little afraid of Ned, who quietly controls people's hearts, which is too penetrating for Wanda. Ah, Ned nodded, hesitating whether to activate chaos magic for Wanda. I have to say that Wanda, the superhero in the movie, is too miserable. Wanda was about to speak when suddenly a blood-red light burst out from Ned's body and shot directly into Wanda's chest, causing her to float. At the same time, Wanda also released a powerful chaos magic in an instant, and with Wanda's painful cry, it hit Ned's lower abdomen. Crack Kacha. Ha 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 ha. Believers of Emperor Wyshan, you are finished. After several sounds of glass breaking, an extremely arrogant voice sounded from Ned's lower abdomen, and then a red crystal the size of a fist, glowing with strange light, shot out and hovered above Wanda's head. In the Lien 4 timeline, Ned teamed up with King and Strange to seal the red magic stone. What? As the red magic stone floated above her head, Wanda's screams became more painful, and the red chaotic magic radiating around her became more intense. It's you. How could you break through the seal? Ned asked with a frown after seeing the red magic stone. And for some reason, if the stone hadn't jumped out today, he seemed to have forgotten about this guy. Otherwise, he would have given it to Ji Yuyi long ago. How could he have allowed it to be so rampant now? Ha 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 ha. The red magic stone smiled arrogantly. Do you think the time storm is so easy to bear? If Master Hong hadn't taken the initiative to bear most of the damage for you, your mortal body would have turned into nothingness long ago. Quantum storm. Ned was stunned, and then looked at Wanda, who was obviously controlled by the red magic stone. He felt that it was extremely difficult, and asked, then why didn't you just take advantage of me to escape or fight back when I was seriously injured before? Why did you just kill me today? Dare you come out? Humph. Perhaps because Wanda was here, Red Magic Stone felt that he had a chance to win, so he was not in a hurry to take action, and snorted coldly, do you think the seal of you 3 secret magicians is so easy to break? Even with the power of the time storm, Mr. Hong and I have only broken a crack, which is not enough to regain freedom. But it is precisely because of this crack that I have the opportunity to use the power from the time storm to cast magic to interfere with your memory and make you forget me. Otherwise, you would have handed me over to Ji Yuyi long ago and then crushed my bones into ashes. Alright. Master Hong, I have really sacrificed a lot to survive. In order to avoid Ancient One, I even took the initiative to tease the space gem and use its power to randomly travel through the universe. Otherwise, it would be impossible to break the multiverse barrier with just a mere space gem. Quote. Ned looked at the red magic stone that took the initiative to explain everything and solved his doubts, and couldn't help but worry about its IQ. Then he tried to say, then how did you come out now? Of course I used Master Hong's magic to stir up the chaos magic in this little girl's body to break through the seal. Red Magic Stone said arrogantly, I tell you, today is the day you die. There is almost infinite chaos magic that can be mobilized, and even Ancient One will die today. The sound of the red magic stone fell, and a red light shot directly at Ned without any warning. At the same time, various buildings on the left and right were also thrown at Ned under the influence of chaos magic. Come on then. There was no trace of fear on Ned's face, and he shouted loudly, erecting a 360-degree defensive shield with no blind spots to protect himself. There is a reason why Ned is not afraid of the red magic stone. No matter how powerful the red magic stone is, it will only be able to exert only 20 to 30% of its strength after it has just broken through the seal. Facing an enemy whose strength can only be used to the best of 23/10, if Ned still can't beat him, it's either Ned who has given up, or the opponent is a dimensional demon-level being. Obviously, neither is possible. As for the red magic stone controlling Wanda, although Wanda's chaos magic is powerful, it has not been developed after all. How powerful can the red magic stone be if it is forcibly mobilized? Anyway, Ned didn't panic at all. Well, let's not talk too much. Kakaka. As the red magic stone exerted its power, ferocious cracks gradually appeared on Ned's protective shield. This is not normal, Ned murmured, and quickly rotated his hands in coordination. Stab. A portal opened beneath his feet, and Ned fell straight down. Crack. Boom. The moment Ned just entered the portal, the protective shield was shattered, and all the surrounding objects, including the stone pier cars controlled by the red magic stone with Wanda's power, all hit Ned's original location. Then a red light came, and after a violent explosion, there was nothing left except a big crater where Ned was. Stab! Another portal opened in the sky, and Ned's figure shot out from it. As soon as he appeared, a blood-red light streaked across the sky, heading straight for Ned, as if he was waiting for him. Drink. Ned formed a seal with his hands on the left side of his body, and then held it firmly in front of him to form a huge magic circle. The strange red light that hit him collided with the magic circle, and both turned into crystal butterflies and flew for a while. Then slowly disappeared. You seem to know what I'm going to do next. Ned took full advantage of his enemy's intelligence and decisively expressed his doubts. That red light just now was definitely waiting for him. Ha 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 ha. Red Magic Stone burst out laughing. Aren't you talking nonsense? Master Hong, although I have been unable to escape since the time storm, I have been observing your battles and analyzing your techniques, just for today. So, you have no chance of winning. Surrender. Kneel on the ground and sincerely beg for mercy. Maybe Mr. Hong, I will be merciful and let you go. I see. Ned knew it in his heart, but felt it was a little tricky, because he still didn't know what the red magic stone was, but he had already figured it out. The enemy knows us, but I don't know the enemy, which is disadvantageous in battle. Well, drink. Ned crossed his hands in front of him and then quickly separated them. A series of clones flew out, each occupying a special position to surround Wanda. Then he summoned two small magic shields at the same time to hold them in his hands and protect them in front of him. I saw a flash of golden light, and a huge and extremely powerful magic shield was formed based on the magic shields in the hands of many clones, covering Wanda inside. This was the first time Ned had used this move. It was based on Kamataja's defensive formation. He didn't believe that the red magic stone could still be broken. Stubborn. The red magic stone controlled Wanda to release a scarlet light that hit the magic shield. Boom. Little bits of golden light lit up, and the magic shield was undamaged. Okay. Red magic stone made a confused sound, and carefully looked around the entire magic shield and the location of Ned's clone again. That monster, I don't care where you come from, surrender. Ned is very confident in his magic. This is Kamataja's defensive formation. Isn't it easy to capture a broken stone that just broke through the seal? Humph. The red magic stone snorted coldly. He looked at the gradually shrinking magic shield and no longer hesitated. He saw a red light shooting out from the red magic stone body, gradually forming a strange shadow of the book in the air. The shadow was under the influence of chaos magic. He kept flipping through it, and then finally stopped on one of the pages. This is. Ned's eyes widened in disbelief when he looked at the shadow of the book. If Ned's memory was correct, the shadow was clearly the projection of the dark book. Looking at the red magic stone again, could it be that the book of darkness has become a spirit? Ned panicked. He was not afraid of heaven or earth, but this dark book, which together with Wanda destroyed Kamataj. Boom. The shadow of the dark god book closed instantly, and then flew back into the red magic stone. Then I saw the red magic stone controlling Wanda to wrap one person and one stone with chaotic magic power, and then squatted down on the ground and turned into a burst of red energy and disappeared. What? Ned was startled and hurriedly maximized his perception. He didn't believe that such an arrogant red magic stone could escape so simply. I didn't expect that you almost caught Mr. Hong and me. The voice of the red magic stone sounded behind him, and Ned turned around hurriedly, only to see Wanda with her eyes tightly closed, her brows furrowed, her expression painful, floating in the sky at the same height as herself, her whole body wrapped in rich chaotic magic, and her head still floating. Holding the red magic stone. But that's it. The sound of the red magic stone fell, and a strong chaotic magic power burst out from Wanda's body without any warning. Boom, boom, boom. Under the influence of this energy, all Ned's clones dissipated and turned into transparent shadows and returned to Ned's body. Hey! A scarlet chaotic magic shock wave was shot from Wanda's body under the control of the red magic stone. Taking advantage of the fact that Ned's magic had just been broken and had no time to counterattack, it rushed directly towards Ned. Seeing this, Ned hurriedly repeated his old trick, forming a seal with his hands by his side again, and then held them in front of him, forming a huge magic circle. Boom. What? Unexpectedly, this time Ned's, Hoggoth's ancient body, did not successfully resolve the shock wave of the red magic stone. The shock wave directly broke through the magic circle, and although most of the energy was dissolved, it still successfully hit Ned. Boom! Ned fell heavily to the ground. Regardless of the pain in his body, Ned hurriedly stood up. After a sudden change in his hands, he pushed forward with his right hand. A golden magic light wave shot out from Ned's palm and went straight to the top of Wanda's head. Red magic stone. Hey, the red magic stone didn't care about this at all, and once again controlled Wanda to release a shock wave of chaotic magic, which directly collided with Ned's magic light wave, and then withstood the pressure of the magic light wave like a torrent, and directly knocked Ned away without losing speed. It flew out again. Boom! Ned fell to the ground and rolled a few times, then raised his hand and another yellow laser shot out. Jung. This time the laser was fired by Ned using the Mind Stone. I don't believe it can't withstand the chaos magic that Wanda has mobilized for the first time. Boom! Unexpectedly, the red magic stone did not choose to confront Ned this time. Instead, it used chaos magic to construct a red magical energy barrier in front of it. No matter how hard Ned tried, he could not penetrate it. Infinity stones. The red magic stone looked at the radiant yellow gem on Ned's right hand below and murmured. What? Seeing that he could not break through the barrier shot by the red magic stone, Ned decisively stopped the output of the Mind Stone, crossed his hands in front of him, and once again used the shape of icon to divide a large number of clones. What? Ah! Two neat shouts were issued, and many of Ned's clones shot together, with two golden magic light waves emitted from both hands. Then the magic light waves gathered and condensed in the sky, causing a qualitative change, forming a super magic light wave with a diameter of several meters, which hit the barrier set by the red magic stone in front of him. What? The red magic stone was shocked. Under the impact of the super magic light wave, his crimson barrier was already somewhat unable to withstand it and was about to dissipate. This is impossible. The voice of the red magic stone resounded throughout the world, and the dark god book was projected out by it again. He quickly turned it to a certain page with chaos magic and then increased the output of chaos magic again. I saw a scarlet magic circle floating out from the projection of the dark god book, gradually getting larger, and finally integrated into the barrier in front of the red magic stone. Several mysterious formations flashed on the crimson barrier, and the next crimson barrier became indestructible again. Even the super magic light waves did not leave any trace on it. Boom! However, at this moment, a slight sound sounded, and dots of yellow light slowly condensed from the sky to the earth, and then merged into Wanda's head silently. The red magic stone did not notice anything from the beginning to the end. Wanda. Wanda. Single quote. A transparent man who looked like Ned and glowed yellow kept shouting her name in Wanda's subconscious. Who are you? Single quote. A weak and helpless voice sounded in this space, responding to Ned's words. Wanda, I'm here to help you. I'm Ned, do you remember? We agreed that I would teach you magic. Single quote. Ned looked around, but saw nothing but darkness, so he had to call out to the emptiness around him again. Ned, learn magic. No, don't want. Single quote. Hearing Ned's words, Wanda's voice was filled with confusion at first, and then was filled with fear and terror, and she cried with a cry, no. Don't attack me. Single quote. Wanda, calm. Don't worry, I won't attack you. No one will attack you. Single quote. As Ned shouted, he closed his eyes tightly and formed seals with his hands in front of his body. Dots of yellow light emitted from his body and blended into the surrounding space to calm Wanda's emotions. As the yellow light dispersed, Ned's originally transparent body became increasingly unreal, as if it would dissipate in the next moment. But the effect is also remarkable. Wanda's scared shouts are gone. Ned, single quote. Wanda's voice sounded again. This time, although it was no longer as hysterical as before, it was still timid. If Ned said something scary at this time, he might be able to scare Wanda to death directly in this consciousness space. Wanda, it's me. Single quote. Ned said as calmly as possible. You really won't hurt me. Don't you control me. Single quote. Wanda's words finally clarified Ned's confusion. He said why Wanda was still so afraid of her even though she was doing good things. It turned out to be because she was scared by her mind control over the Hydra group. Of course not, Wanda, we will be partners, best friends. Single quote. This is Wanda's consciousness space. Here, as long as Wanda puts down her guard, every word Ned says will deeply affect Wanda's future behavior and character, and it is extremely easy to be believed. Best friend. Single quote. Sure enough, after hearing Ned's words, the fear in Wanda's voice gradually disappeared, and she spoke doubtfully again. Yes, best friend, Wanda, I'm here to help you. Where are you? Single quote. Ned asked softly. I don't know. It's so dark in here and I'm so scared, Ned. Single quote. As Wanda's voice sounded, a shadow of Wanda gradually appeared in front of Ned's eyes. Her body was surrounded by black mist, which was used to isolate her from the outside world and her own body. Wanda, I see you, I'm here to pull you out. Single quote. Ned ran to the edge of the black fog in a few steps, mobilized the energy of all the mind stones attached to his shadow, and directly hit the black fog. With the application of the energy of the yellow mind gem, the black mist surrounding Wanda dissipated instantly, revealing a big hole. And Ned, who lost the energy blessing of the mind stone, also began to flicker, and it was really possible to dissipate at any time. Don't even think about it. Single quote. The black fog had just dissipated, and before Ned could say a word to Wanda, the sound of the red magic stone suddenly resounded through the entire consciousness and the projection of his consciousness was washed away. The last memory was Wanda's extremely painful cry. It seems that the red magic stone exerted its power in Wanda's consciousness space without any scruples, causing Wanda great pain. What a secret mage you are. You actually built a plank road openly and secretly visited Chen Kang. The red magic stone looked through countless Ned clones, and sure enough, he saw Ned sitting cross-legged on the ground, and the mind stone in his right hand continued to release energy that melted into the world. Then let these energies flow randomly everywhere in order to send psychic energy to Wanda without disturbing the red magic stone. Although Ned did not deliberately control the energy in order not to disturb the red magic stone, as long as enough was released, some would always reach Wanda. Well, Ned opened his eyes suddenly, and the mind stone in his right hand stopped releasing energy. With the discovery of the red magic stone and his alertness, Ned had no second chance. You die for me. The angry voice of the red magic stone was accompanied by a huge magic circle glowing red. Puff. I saw that the magic circle condensed into a ball with the input of the red magic stone's chaotic magic power, and then rushed straight towards Ned. Boom, boom, boom. All the clones of Ikeen encountered along the way were instantly blasted by the chaotic magic flowing around this energy group. Stab, stab. Facing the menacing chaotic magic energy ball, Ned refused to dodge, and decisively opened a portal in front of him by pulling his hands together. This red magic stone controls Wanda, coupled with the projection of what seems to be the dark book, it is really difficult for Ned to resist. But as a Kamar elite mage who is proficient in portal spells, Ned's favorite attack is energy balls and other attacks, because he can easily return them to the opponent through the portal perfectly. Just when Ned thought he could make a comeback and turn defeat into victory with this wave of Jedi, extremely strong red energy burst out from the chaotic magic energy group again. Crack, click. Just a few crisp sounds were heard, and the portal originally erected in front of Ned suddenly fell into pieces. Depend on. The portal was already very close to Ned, and Ned felt that with the power of the portal, this energy group could be easily eliminated, so he did not set up any defense. At this time, the portal was shattered by the magic of chaos. Ned had no time to react before he was directly hit by the energy ball. Boom. Thick black smoke rose from where Ned originally stood. The red magic stone looked down. Although he felt that Ned was dead, he still couldn't help summoning 2 more magic circles and rubbing out 2 chaotic magic energy balls. Hit the place where the smoke is thickest. Boom. Do you think I should thank you for your attention, or should I angrily stab you into powder with this thing? Ned's voice suddenly sounded on both sides of the sky. The red magic stone hurriedly released its senses to check, only to see 2 Neds standing in the sky, each holding a sword, one purple and the other green. The entire sky was also covered in purple and green streams of light, which was really impressive. Purple-green sword. The red magic stone did not pay attention to these 2 swords and Ned's clone at all, and said, how did those 2 guys be solved neatly by Ji Yi back then? Grandpa, I will finish you cleanly today. Quote. Is it? Another sound came from the ground, and Ned slowly floated out of the pit holding a pitch-black spear. Black light shone from the spear, making people afraid to look directly at him. Ha ha ha. It's just a group of defeated generals' weapons. How did you get the confidence to think that you can defeat me with them? The red magic stone releases its energy in the sky unscrupulously. Although I don't know how you survived my killing blow unscathed, this will only make me more serious and torture you more cruelly. As the voice fell, overwhelming small chaotic magic energy balls scattered out from Wanda's body. Everything around him was hit and destroyed by the energy balls, and Ned's 3 clones were the first to bear the brunt. Who? In the mirror space, Ned lay on the ground panting, his trembling palms gently stroking the levitating cloak on his body. Thank you. Looking at the big hole in the center of the levitating cloak, Ned said sincerely. That's right. Just when the chaotic magic energy group was about to hit Ned, the levitating cloak automatically broke away from Ned, and then flew in front of him to block most of the damage from the blow. But despite this, Ned was still in severe pain all over his body at this time. The power of the red magic stone's attack was really too strong. There was no other way, and he really couldn't defeat him. Ned had already planned to open the space door and ask for help from Kamar before the red magic stone noticed anything was wrong. Not good. Single quote. Ned's mind suddenly moved, and he could feel that all 3 of his clones were scattered. Click, click. Several sudden sounds sounded, and the space in front of Ned suddenly distorted, becoming like glass, and even reflected Ned's face with a mask of pain. Crash. The glass in front of him suddenly shattered, and a red light shot out. He grabbed Ned by the neck and pulled him out of the mirror space. Seeing this, the floating cloak with a big hole in it hurriedly flew to follow. You are really good at it. The red magic stone used chaos magic to control Ned and photograph him to the same height as himself. He said in a cold voice. He actually hid in the mirror space. Grandpa, I was almost fooled by you. As he spoke, the red magic stone also noticed the blackened mage robe on Ned and the floating cloak with a big hole in it flying from behind, and said, I'm just saying, how can you be unscathed, huh? In that case, I'll use your weapons to send you on your way. The sound of the red magic stone fell, and the black spear and the purple and green swords all floated up from the ground, flew to and stopped in front of Ned. All the spear points and swords were pointed at Ned, and they might explode at any time and take Ned's life. Well, Ned struggled hard, but no matter what, he couldn't break free from the shackles of the red magic stone's chaos magic. Hee. The red magic stone sneered. The purple and green swords and the dark spear gradually penetrated Ned's body. Jung. Seeing this, the levitating cloak rushed forward anxiously. The cloak rolled up and wrapped up the spear and the 2 swords. He used his body to hold them tightly, making it impossible to hurt Ned in the slightest. This cloak is quite loyal, isn't it? The red magic stone made a slightly artificial sound of surprise, and then threw Ned away and said, I want you to watch this cloak die in front of your eyes without being able to do anything. Drink. The red magic stone instantly strengthened the chaotic magic power originally used to control the spear and the purple and green swords, causing all 3 magic weapons to lose their original color, leaving only a permeating scarlet light. Boom. The 3 magic weapons filled with chaos magic were each exerting force in one direction under the levitation cloak. The originally extremely sharp spears and swords became even more powerful after being blessed by chaos magic, and instantly cut the levitation cloak into pieces. The cloth fell feebly to the ground. Do not. Ned's eyes widened and turned red. The levitating cloak was different from other magical weapons. She had her own independent thoughts. During the time she was with Ned, it was more appropriate to say that she was a partner rather than a magical weapon. What? Jung. Ned turned his hands sharply in front of him, and a huge rotating gear-shaped golden disc cutting blade appeared in front of him. Drink. Ned waved the golden cutting blade with both hands and instantly rushed towards the red magic stone. Death to me. Next. Ned summoned the same disc cutting blade again without waiting for the cutting blade to hit the red magic stone, and directly dragged it with his right hand into the air and rushed towards the red magic stone. Asshole. Is this how magic works? The red magic stone didn't pay attention to Ned's last resort, but when he saw Ned holding the cutting skill, which was clearly a long-range skill, and charging straight at him, he shouted in great anger. It felt that Ned's behavior seriously disgraced the mage and was not worthy of becoming an excellent mage. Ohm. The first disc-cutting blade hit the defensive barrier set up by the red magic stone. The high-speed rotating cutting tooth blade shot out sparks on the barrier, but it was still unable to cause any real effective damage to the crimson barrier. You are just struggling to your death. Let me teach you how to be a real mage. The red magic stone roared, and the projection of the dark book appeared again. A bunch of obscure and incomprehensible spells were uttered from the mouth of the red magic stone as the Book of Darkness was turned, and a huge flame shadow gradually formed in the sky. The last move to finish you off. As the flame shadow gradually solidified, the red magic stone shouted, as if Ned would die without a burial place in the next moment. Sudden. This is impossible. The red magic stone's panicked voice, even mixed with a hint of fear, was heard. The chaos magic he absorbed from Wanda to wrap himself and Wanda suddenly became flickering, and the solid flame shadow above him also instantly dissipated. Even the strength of the crimson barrier in front of him dropped instantly, and the chaos magic attached to the barrier gradually became thinner under the attack of the disc-cutting blade. Boom. Finally, the disc-cutting blade and the crimson barrier disappeared together, die. Following closely behind him was Ned, who was holding a super cutting blade in his hand and killing the red magic stone at all costs. Don't think about it. The red magic stone tried its best to control Wanda to retreat at a high speed, leaving Ned's attack range, and then slowly landed on the ground. The chaos magic he was driving now could no longer let him squander it wantonly, so every little bit he could save was worth it. Ned couldn't fly in the sky forever without his cloak. The reason why he was able to fly up with the cutting blade to chop the red magic stone just now was a short-lived effect caused by magic. It couldn't last at all, so he also started to fall to the ground. Drink. Ned shouted and threw the cutting blade he was holding towards the red magic stone. Buzz. Buzz. The red light on the surface of the red magic stone is flashing, and through the crystal, you can vaguely see a flame burning crazily in its body. Although I don't know why it is like this, it is obvious that he can't protect himself. Facing Ned's flying cutting blade, the red magic stone simply abandoned Wanda and ran away without fighting. Ned didn't kill her, and Wanda didn't need the chaotic magic power. Not good. As soon as the red magic stone runs away, Wanda is waiting for the cutting blade. Wanda is still in a daze at this moment and has difficulty reacting effectively. Have it. Drink. Ned suddenly caught a glimpse of the 3 weapons at Wanda's feet, 1 spear, 2 swords, and 3 weapons that Ned handed to the clone, and were then knocked down by the red magic stone. So Ned shouted low, waving his arms fiercely and crossing his chest. As Ned waved, the 3 weapons scattered on the ground automatically floated up and crashed into the cutting blade that was about to hit Wanda at high speed. Boom. The powers of the 4 offset each other, and the cutting blades turned into light points and dissipated. The 3 weapons also used their own origins to fight against the cutting blades because they did not have any mana support just now, causing their origins to be exhausted and fell apart. Stop. Although he didn't know what was going on with the red magic stone, Ned also knew that it was necessary to kill him while he was sick. He raised his hand and shot out a magic light wave, heading straight for the red magic stone floating in the air. Click, click, pop. However, before Ned's magic light wave could hit, the red magic stone suddenly made bursts of glass sounds, followed by a crisp sound, and then shattered directly from the middle into pieces, and then was instantly blown away by an unknown force from somewhere. The strange red flames that rose burned into nothingness. Quote ? Quote. Ned said he didn't understand. Ned had been confused about the situation since the red magic stone's energy was inexplicably unstable. But Ned was afraid that this was a way for the red magic stone to escape, so he maximized his senses and frantically scanned every inch of space around him. It wasn't until Wanda's confused shout in front of him pulled him out of this state. Ned opened his eyes and saw Wanda standing there with a weak look on her face, so he hurriedly asked, "Wanda, how do you feel now? Did that bad guy leave any consequences in your body?" Wanda shook her head in confusion, and Ned finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw this. He dragged his heavy legs not far away and took back all the fragments of the cloak to see if they could be repaired when he returned to Kamar. Wong. Poof. Boom. Putting the cloak fragments into the mirror space, Ned was about to call out to Wanda when he was shocked by a sudden powerful energy from behind and spurted out a mouthful of blood. He flew 4 to 5 meters in the air before rolling heavily to the ground. Ned. Wanda's voice of panic and self-blame sounded, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I didn't know." Ned endured the severe pain and looked up, only to see Wanda standing where he had just picked up the fragments of the cloak, looking at his hands in panic, while the surface of her body gradually calmed down. The magic of chaos. Ned probably understood that it was Wanda who wanted to help him, but she had not yet adapted to the chaos magic inspired by the red magic stone in her body, so the moment she had the idea of helping him, she was instantly taken away by the chaos magic. Moved over. As for Ned, who was knocked away, it was entirely due to a lack of control of chaos magic and an accidental injury. Okay, Wanda, it's not your fault. Ned shook his head hard as he spoke, struggling to get up. Puff. Then he was knocked out again by Wanda, who wanted to come to help him. Boom. Cough. Cough. Ned coughed up 2 mouthfuls of blood and said, Wanda, you should stand still and don't have any thoughts. Remember, don't have any thoughts. Well, Wanda had already panicked, and now she obeyed Ned's orders. Stab. Ned waved his arm to open a portal that led directly to the Ancient One's door, then waved his arm to make the portal automatically move through Wanda, and then fell into it. Ned, the last memory is the king's voice. Ned. After Ned woke up again, I don't know how long it was. The king stood guard in front of Ned's bed. When he saw Ned making any movement, he hurriedly came over, holding a bowl of unknown liquid in his hand, handed it to Ned's mouth and said, This is the medicinal soup prepared by the ancient master himself. Drink it. Woo. After the king finished speaking, he poured the medicine directly into Ned's mouth without waiting for a reply. Ned, who was most afraid of the bitterness of the medicine, let his eyes fill with tears. Ned, how are you feeling? After finishing a bowl of medicinal soup, Wong put the bowl on the bedside table and asked Ned expectantly. Thank you. Ned's eyes were dull and he said blankly. Hey, why are we saying these things to each other? It's not a thank you. You're so polite. You're too polite. Wong smiled and said, Then I will send the bowl away and tell everyone the news of your waking up. You can lie down well. After Wong finished speaking, he quickly opened the door and walked out. After the king left, Ned wiped away the tears from the corners of his eyes. The tears were more because of the broken cloak and the bitterness of the medicine, but it was just a prelude. Yes, that's it, that's what it must be. Ned. Mordo dragged Wong and hurriedly opened the door and ran in. As soon as he came in, he saw Ned, who was holding a red rag and was in great pain. They looked at each other and fell silent. As a magic weapon, it is her duty and mission to protect her master loyally. Believe me, her soul will be smiling when she leaves. The king stepped forward and patted Ned on the shoulder, saying in a serious tone. I know. Ned put away the rags, then looked at Wong and Mordo, and asked, Where is the little girl I brought? Her situation is a bit special, is there no trouble? Humph. Mordo, who originally wanted to comfort Ned like the king, suddenly turned dark when he heard Ned's words. He snorted and said, The energy in that person's body is so weird. It's obviously not the right path. How could you bring her here? Holy land. That's too rash. Ned was stunned by Mordo's lecture and turned to look at the king inquiringly. This guy Modu suffered a big loss at the hands of this little girl, so he is always disliked by others. The king leaned into Ned's ear and whispered. But the distance was only that small, and everyone in the room was not an ordinary person. How could Wang's whispers be hidden from Modu? King, we are talking about it. Why are you bringing up personal matters? Modu's face turned darker and he said with force. But both the king and Ned could easily see that he lacked confidence. But it was said that Ned opened the portal at the door of Ancient One that day, and happened to bump into Wong and Mordo, who came out with Ancient One. When Mordo saw the portal, he was first shocked, and then angry, because the magician of Kamar dared to open the portal directly to the door of the Supreme Mage. Isn't this blasphemy and disrespect? Then he fell down, and the embarrassed Ned was startled. He hurriedly stepped forward to check the situation, but Wanda, who was startled by the space teleportation, accidentally released the chaos magic and flew away. Go out. If it weren't for the obstruction of Ancient One and Wong, Modu, who recognized the chaos magic, would definitely summon all the magicians of Kamar to fight in defense of the law. She is now under the personal care of the Supreme Being, don't worry. Wong said. So what happened? It made you so embarrassed. You must know that you are stronger than me and Modu now. Ned shook his head, saying that he was only talking to the Supreme Mage, and then he was about to get out of bed to see the Ancient One, but as soon as he turned over, he was suppressed by the severe pain coming from his body. Lying on the bed, Ned said speechlessly that he had been bedridden for the rest of his life. Seeing this, the king said, You should recover well first, and I will tell the Supreme Mage about your situation. At the same time, I will also see if the little girl you brought back can control her own power easily. If so, I will bring her here too. It's up to you. After speaking, Wang pulled Modu out and walked out. Watching them leave, Ned shook his head. He wanted to watch a movie but found that his phone was damaged during the battle. Drink. The bored Ned shouted, and the transparent Ned stood up, looked at himself with his eyes closed on the bed, clapped his hands, and walked out through the door. With Ned's cultivation, even if he used his spirit body to wander around Kamar so unscrupulously, only the Ancient One could discover him without doing anything, so Ned had no worries about being regarded as a ghost. Hang him up and beat him. Ned. The voice from behind made Ned stiffen. Ned. Where is Ned? He's so injured that he can't get out of bed. Modu said casually after hearing Wanda's words next to him. No. No. Ned. Are you dead? I seem to be able to see your soul. As Wanda spoke, she tremblingly stretched out a hand towards Ned's spirit body. At the same time, little red lights appeared between her fingers, and her eyes gradually glowed with scarlet light. However, Wanda's emotions were different. Somewhat out of control, unable to control his chaos magic. No, Wanda. Wang first woke up Wanda with a loud shout, then looked seriously at the empty place in front of him and said, Ned. Come out. Otherwise, Morduk will tell you about Kamatai again later. G's mage regulations. All right. Ned's spirit body gradually emerged, and regardless of Mordo's ugly expression, he said to Wanda, Wanda, I am alive and well. You can understand this as a kind of magic, the spirit body leaving the body. I'm sorry, Ned. Wanda didn't know how badly Ned was hurt, but she knew that because of her carelessness, Ned vomited blood twice in succession, so her heart was filled with guilt. Fine. Ned stretched out his spiritual hand and put it on Wanda's face. Although there was no touch and Wanda had no feeling, Ned still gently stroked his thumb and comforted, Don't blame yourself, you are very powerful. It's stronger than anything I've ever seen, so it's understandable that I can't control it. Master Ancient One helped me seal some of my powers, which allows me to control them more easily. When I grow up, she will help me release them. Wanda let Ned's hand go and said, She also said that you can also help me lift this seal, if it is not convenient for her at that time. Of course, Ned knew what the so-called inconvenience meant. He nodded and said, I will help you. I remember that there are other ways of magic in Kamataj's book. Maybe you can ask Master Ancient One to learn about it. Ned took back his right hand and led everyone towards his house, speaking as he walked. Master Ji Yuyi told me about this matter. She said that my own energy is already strong enough. As long as I can master them, I can defeat most enemies. There is no need to go to the trouble of learning those low-end magics. Wanda said as she walked, looking at Ned all the time as she spoke, not afraid of missing anything under her feet. Please like my videos and subscribe for more videos.